welcome everybody to the HBMP JRPG podcast. We have a very special episode, a very special spoiler cast for the latest released Trails game in English at this particular point, Trails into Reverie. So this is going to be a very, I think, lengthy spoiler cast, but we'll try to keep it as condensed as we possibly can. Let's go off to the panel here. First up, Riku, go ahead with the intro.
Riku-san, one, the only one. Hi, everybody. Once again, we are back here with a spoiler cast. If you know, we did one for Cold Steel 3. We did one for Cold Steel 4. This Reverie one, there's been a decent amount of you guys that have been asking, when is the Reverie spoiler? When is the Reverie spoiler cast? When's it happening in the comment section? Sorry to keep you guys waiting. You know how life is. But we said that we would get this out before daybreak. And yeah, we're doing it now.
Alrighty. Tarks, go ahead with your intro and tell us what your history with Trails games.
All right, so Tarks Gauntlet. I cover RPGs on YouTube, though I haven't uploaded in 250 days. Secret second channel, Tarks Inverted. You're hearing it here first. It's not much going on there either. I will be active again, but I started Trails at Cold Steel 1 on the Vita, followed straight up by Cold Steel 2, and then there was a several year gap between 2 and 3 coming out, so I caught up on the entire rest of the series. Played 1, 2, and 3 on PC of the Sky trilogy, and then moved on to Crossbell, which was emulated with a super broken patch, English translation patch. There was nothing better at the time. Still enjoyed my time with it. From there, 3, 4, finally done Reverie. Hit credits on Nayuta today, so I'm like basically caught up. Also, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. King Recon, go ahead, man.
Yo, man. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. I never get the opportunity to talk about Trails or any of this type of stuff. So this is going to be super dope. I'm looking forward to hearing how y'all felt about this game. But on my end, you may know me as the Goat Raw Fire Pete guy. I play a lot of Final Fantasy Trails on my own, but on my channel, I mainly only cover the anime and manga series One Piece. So I'm really into long series and stories. That's basically how I got into Trails. I had one of my subscribers tell me that they found the One Piece of JRPGs, and I thought they were trolling with me. I was like, oh, there's no way that something as long or as consistent as One Piece, at least to me, exists within the realm of video games, because I'd really only been exposed to, at that point, stuff like Final Fantasy, which I grew up with, Final Fantasy 7, Kingdom Hearts, that type of stuff. But besides Metal Gear Solid and those, I'd never really delved into video game storytelling or what JRPGs have to offer. So when I was shown this Trail stuff, I was really caught off guard. I didn't know video games could do this. And I was blown away. I started off with FC, then the pandemic hit, and it was from FC to catching up to Cold Steel 3 in that month or 2 month wait for Cold Steel 4. And I just fell in love. It brought me back to my childhood of playing Final Fantasy 7, and it brought me back to when I was in middle school, catching up to Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, and all of the anime that I absolutely adore. Because of those long-running series, those stereotypes, those tropes, those archetypes are all here present in Trails. And that's something that for me was so huge, because it kind of brought me back onto the gaming thing. And I'll always be grateful to it. It's a story that means a lot to me. And I every time I get the opportunity to talk about Trails, it's always going to be a good time. And especially this game with how special it is. We had to wait 4 years after release to get this in English. So I'm just extremely excited to be able to finally talk about this game with y'all. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, awesome. And you guys know me, Mr. JRPG Shadow. You guys know I played all the Trails games up until this point. I guess excluding Nayuta. I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to playing that one, but we'll see about that. But yeah, I did start with Sky, and then I played Sky 2, had a long break, and then I think Cold Steel 3 was coming out, so I just went back on a whole huge binge and just played the whole series up to Cold Steel 3, and been playing them ever since. And I don't have really any plans to stop, but we'll see. I do get fatigued sometime with the series, but I think a good amount of time goes by between the English release, the Japanese release, so I guess I'll still be in here for the long haul. All right, so let's talk about this game, Trails in the Reverie. I guess if anything, we want to talk about the story going first. So I'll kick things off. I thought the story here was just fine. I was really impressed, or rather taken aback, by the plot twist being a little bit of AI shenanigans going on. And I kind of felt that this series was going into a more multi-universe type deal with this, but they decided to do a more AI robots taking over type thing. If I'm still correct, I'm pretty sure that's right, Riku?
Correct.
Okay, so caught off guard with that. Didn't care for it too much, but overall, the thing about Trails games is, if it's something I don't like, I find that I think they execute it pretty well for me to not complain about it too long. I've seen a lot of people say that they don't like that what went on in Reverie, and I'll say, okay, I guess that's a little bit fair, but at the same time, there's always a connection to everything, and everything kind of makes sense. So, hey, if that's what they want to do, that's what they wanted to do. Story setup, having Rean, Lloyd, and our mass fellow, which that's something else I want to talk about, being the routes that you take within the game. Pretty interesting way to execute, because going through this point in particular with the series, I don't think we've got too many entries that came from different points of view in different scenarios, I believe. So I think everybody's route was just pretty much fine. No real complaints about anybody's route that I have a particular issue with. Actually, I do take issue with C's route a little bit, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So yeah, Tarks, you got any things you want to say about the story overall? What you didn't like, what you loved?
Yeah, sure. I can pick up where you left off there. First off, this is a spoiler cast, so that masked fellow, we were talking about, we're expecting everybody listening has played the game or does not care to play the game, so we will be talking about who that is shortly, I guess.
I'll come.
But on the idea of the story being like okay, I think is how you put it. I see where you're coming from, and to an extent, I sort of agree. But where we left off in Cold Steel 4, I honestly didn't know if they could recover the plot from there. Because Cold Steel 4, there was a lot of garbage going on at the end that I didn't think they could properly make work going forward. And with Reverie, I thought they'd done like a really commendable job cleaning that up, closing that arc from the Cold Steel saga and Crossbell at the same time. And while the writing definitely had like issues at certain points and things that I thought were just kind of hand waved away, like some really dumb bullshit. At one point, they introduced the concept called spiritual hacking that gets absolutely no explanation. All those issues that they introduce, I feel like, are things that could only be they're contained to this game. So I think this game kind of fixes Cold Steel 4 and caps things off in a way that going into Kuro no Kiseki from here on out, whatever issues they wrote into here should not affect what goes on forward. And I thought that was really, really commendable. So I thought that they actually flexed a lot of really good writing muscles here, considering where we left off.
Okay. Recon?
So I'm a big Raw after WrestleMania fan. Every time that comes around, it's always exciting. And Trails into Reverie feels like that Raw after WrestleMania feel. But for this story, it's just like Sky the Third in a lot of different ways. But what I really appreciated about it was the way that it carried, because for me, Cold Steel 3 and 4 was like the super highest peakest of the peak, in terms of long term payoff and stuff that we'd seen up until this point in the series. So for Reverie, I didn't know if it was needed when I first started getting into it, and when I turned it on, I was just excited to see these characters again. But as it went on, I understood they had a plan. There was a process to bridge what was necessary between the cold steel and crossbell stuff, heading into the next stuff. And I loved all three routes. I think what they did to the characters in those routes, in particular in C's and Rean's route, they did an insane job with so many characters there, both the new faces and the faces we've known for a long time. They just did a marvelous job of having them do and have something that is not just something that was back in, like, let's just say for like Randy, for example, right? It just this is a spoiler cast. So as like Randy, for example, he has a moment in this game that is sort of similar to what happens in Ao no Kiseki. But in this one, it sort of parallels it to show that he has grown since then. There's a lot of stuff like that. A lot of stuff showing how the characters have grown. A lot of stuff showing they still have growth. There's still growth to be had. In that regard, I absolutely loved it. And because of the door system, I'm a big fan of short stories, especially whenever they're in a long form story like this. So I love what they did with the daydream system, in particular, putting so many things that are just fan service, but just fantastic Trails fan service at its finest. And then I'm a big character moments guy in any of my in anything that I experience, and this game is just filled with so many fantastic character moments. I feel like my favorite characters up until this point in the story have their best and brightest moments here, or at least some of their best and brightest. And to have this be the culmination, the Raw after WrestleMania for the entire first half of the story, I feel like they did the best job that they could do going from one hardware to the next. This was right in the middle of the PS4, PS5 thing. So it was a lot of experimentation, letting us know what could be possible coming in soon. But just tying up a lot of loose ends from both the Crossbell and the Cold Steel sides, while also giving us so much new content to look back on and re-experience and just be like, man, they knew what they were doing. I'm so glad that they created Reverie, that it wasn't just a DLC, or I don't know if that was ever a plan to have this be a DLC, but I'm glad it was its own game because it deserved it, especially for both C and Rean's route. And I loved Lloyd's route too, but those two in particular just really stood out to me.
Okay, all right. Riku?
Here we go.
Hi, everybody. Eiden Setsu Hajimari no Kiseki. Man, oh man. I love this game. I love it a lot. You know, guys know I put a clean 400 hours of playtime into it.
He's a madman.
Fucking absolutely destroyed this game. Fucking loved it. I played it for like half a year. It was wild. Man, where do I begin? I'll say this. I'll start off with how Cold Steel 4 wraps stuff up, because I am a part of the... No, I was about to say I'm a part of the minority that likes Cold Steel 4. That's not true. The minority actually hates Cold Steel 4. They're just loud. I'm a part of the majority, the silent majority, that likes Cold Steel 4 and likes a lot of the stuff that Cold Steel 4 did in regards to its climax and whatnot. One of the things that me and Shadow talked about when we were done with Cold Steel 4, like in the DMs and whatnot, was in regards to the ending of Cold Steel 4 and how the game basically forces you to see, quote unquote, the bad ending, even though you did the prerequisites to get the true ending. Every player has to see the bad ending before they see the true ending. And I remember talking to Shadow about this and how it was very weird and unorthodox of an execution to force people to do that, because I can't think of any other game that says, "Oh, you got the true ending? Watch the bad ending first, and then you get the true ending." No, it's like you see one or the other, you know.
Near.
But Nier makes you do that. Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I guess outside of Nier, yeah, that's it's a very unorthodox. Nier's already an unorthodox, game in regards to that too. So I guess that makes sense, right? But I was theorizing with him as to why Cold Steel 4 made people go through that, and I was telling him that there is a possibility that Falcom is doing something that is similar to what Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure did. To which and where, if you're watching a Reverie spoiler, I'm assuming you've already played Azure and Zero. So Azure and Zero spoilers here, just in case you skipped those games and you haven't played it, but you played this. First of all, you're a weirdo, but that's your decision. But spoiler for those games. Trails from Zero, you reach at the end of Trails from Zero and you see they showed at the beginning of Trails from Zero, you're with your squad, you see them, and then by the end of the game, you're with your squad again, but Joshua and Estelle are there. And at that time, we assumed, oh, well, it was just Falcom didn't want to spoil that Joshua and Estelle was with them, and that's why we didn't see them in the first time they showed it at the beginning of the game, and why they're showing it now. But then you get to Azure, and you realize that, oh no, buddy, those two scenes that you saw were two different realities. One was the first one that they ended up dying in because they didn't have Joshua and Estelle, and the second one is the one you've been playing all along that you do have Joshua and Estelle, and that is one of my favorite fucking plot twists in the entire franchise, and I loved it. But the point is, you didn't know what Falcon was cooking when you played Trails from Zero, and you don't get to see that payoff until Trails to Azure, and I love that. So I was talking to Shadow about how I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing something similar to that, not in the same way, but similar to it, which is why they probably forced us to watch the bad ending so that we at least have knowledge of it going into Trails into Reverie, which if you play Trails into Reverie, you know that the main antagonist or villain is what was the official name they gave him? Ishmael Gareen. Ishmael Gareen. And and the fact that his story, or his characterization, was based off of the bad ending in Cold Steel 4 that they forced everyone to watch. I theorized that they were going to do something like that. I just didn't know how. And they've already messed around with alternate timelines in Trails before, so I knew it had something to do with that. But I like the way they did it in here. I like the transition from going into more futuristic style of things. If you've been playing Trails, you know that this is something that's just been a natural and quick progression from their their civilization and it moving forward. So this is just a natural progression, and probably this one, I would say this one's definitely a big jump in regards to technology, because before that, you had the introduction of Panzer Soldat at the end of Cold Steel 1, but here now I feel like we made another jump in regards to the whole AI and androids and whatnot, and it was a cool trope that Trails has not done yet, and I felt they done it well. Trails is always known to been doing tropes since its beginning, so that's nothing new. But that's one thing I do like about Trails, is that when they do decide to do a trope, for the most part, they do that trope very well. And I felt that was the same thing when it came to here as well. The the fact that this is, you can definitely consider this similar to Trails in the Sky third chapter, where this is your epilogue game, our second epilogue game, right? Because
Mhm.
Cold Steel, no, Trails, the Crossbow games didn't have one, but this is our second one, and they definitely improved a lot of things when it came to the execution of what I'm calling an epilogue type of game. A lot of people, when they played Trails in the Sky third chapter, and I think Shadow's one of them, they came out of third chapter lukewarm-ish with it, and with a decent amount of people saying, you can skip third chapter. You don't really have to play it that much.
Big facts.
And I always give those people pushback when it comes to that. No. Trails in the Sky third chapter, it has its relevance. It's just that Trails in the Sky third chapter, in comparison to first paired Trails games, which when I say first paired Trails games, I'm talking about your Trails in the Sky first chapter, Trails from Zero, Cold Steel 1, and Cold Steel 3. These are the games that set up things so that Trails in the Sky second chapter, Trails to Azure, Cold Steel 2, and Cold Steel 4 can capitalize on. Trails in the Sky third chapter, when it created these epilogue entries, it was like they were doing both in regards to wrapping up the stuff that happened before it, but also setting up a lot of stuff in the future. So it's both it's both a payoff and a setup game at the same time. And if anybody's following Lady Pelvic, you know she recently got into Trails in the Sky as well, and she just released her Trails in the Sky first and second chapter video. Go and watch that. She should be releasing her third chapter video soon. So I'm not going to spoil what she thought about those. But what I was talking to her was that Trails in the Sky third chapter sets up a lot of stuff. The first paired games, they mostly set up stuff for the next game that follows it. But Trails in the Sky third chapter sets up stuff on like multiple games ahead. It's set. You can see stuff that Trails in the Sky third chapter set up in Azure. You can see it throughout all of Cold Steel.
Give me a reminder of one of those things that they set up.
Like the Salt Pail, that was one from Cold Steel 4. The Olivier and Osborne.
Right. Okay.
Conversation in Erebonia.
Right. Yeah. Those things were definitely good setups and or foreshadowing things that Trails in the Sky third chapter set up. Definitely the Salt Pail, because that's one thing that a lot of people who are big fans of Trails in the Sky third chapter, when you tell someone to rank their favorite Trails games, if they have third chapter at the top and you ask them why do they like third chapter so much, one of the main things they'll tell you is because from a world building standpoint, third chapter is very strong when it comes to explaining and setting up a lot of stuff that we weren't aware of and what is going to happen. And the Salt Pill is a very good example of that.
So wait a minute. So all the things that they set up, those are told through the Star Doors.
The Star Door. Yeah.
Okay, see, that's one of the things I don't like. I don't like them going with that. It's just like literally just like it's like something that you could view online or something like that. Like you don't have to play. Well, you do have to play to get to that point, but just the way that is set up, so that it's not really part of the story. They're just giving you information that you have to know for the other games. Just doesn't. I don't know. The way it's executed doesn't feel right to me in this case. But that's one of the reasons I don't care for it.
In fairness, when all this stuff comes back in later games, they also just kind of exposition dump all the information to you then as well. So like if you didn't play third chapter, there's some of the best moments in the series are in third chapter, and I don't recommend 100%. Skipping it. But if you didn't play third chapter, anything that's like directly plot relevant from that game will still be explained really well when it becomes relevant again.
Yeah, and I do like the fact that you could say that when Falcom was sitting there in their plotting this out, they probably thought there is probably going to be someone that either skipped Trails in the Sky second chapter or haven't played it and they're playing this one. And although we would have preferred if you did play it, we are going to try our best to fill you in on what Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter did set up. So yeah, Tarks is correct in regards to when they did mention the Salt Pail in Cold Steel 4. They did a good job explaining the phenomena of the Salt Pail in Cold Steel 4. But if you were someone that played Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter, you know that it was set up and explained here first. And this right here is either it can be used as your first introduction to this piece of lore, or it can also be a reminder that this is something that was relevant back then, and we're reminding you that it is still relevant now, and the relevance of it is being executed right now. I understand your critique in regards to the presentation of that. You can definitely play the main story of 3rd chapter and then go and watch all of the Star Doors online. Not saying that you can't do that. It's a kind of goofy way to do it, but you can do it that way, right? But that doesn't I don't think that deteriorates Trails in the stuff that Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter has that much. But I do agree with the way it was handled. I'm not sure how would be a better way to let's just call it what it is, lore dump all of that onto you. 3rd chapter is an entry where it's like Falcom knew that they had specific things that they needed to tell the player, and we need to find a way to give this to you. So it's like they couldn't give it to you in 1st and 2nd chapter because Joshua and Estelle, Ouroboros, they already had a decent amount of stuff going in there, and they couldn't really stuff it in there because it's like people already complain about the pacing of these games, right? So it's like, where can we put this? And it seems like these epilogue games is where they feel is the best place to give us this information, so that the other games don't have to worry that much about the stuff that they feel like they need to tell you here, which would bog the pacing down even more. Trails into Reverie, I feel, did a better job at executing I guess the door system, as you would call it. They call it daydreams here. To which and where in 3rd chapter we're running around. I don't know if you guys remember because it's been a bit of a minute, but I was watching Lady Pelvic play it, and I was like, oh my god, I completely forgot how borderline tedious it could be when it came to just finding the doors in Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter. The biggest example of that was the final Star Door in 3rd chapter. Everyone knows it. Star Door 15.
Is the final one, though, the one where you need to have opened all the other Star Doors to get into?
Right.
I think that's
if
one of the
I'm
final.
mistaken, I believe that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the final ones. I think there's two final ones.
Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter does the same thing Cold Steel 4 does, where it ends 4 fucking times.
Well, I was more so talking about the tedium of finding the Star Doors or the requirements or whatnot. I felt Cold Steel 4 did a in regards to games that have true endings, especially in comparison to Ys 8, they made it very user friendly to get that. Finish all the side missions in the final chapter, and you're good to go.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I honestly thought Cold Steel 4 handled delivering the true ending terribly. I'll be honest, because you have to beat the game and then just know to reload it, and then just know to reload it, and then just know to reload it, and go to these unique places, right? But
no, I'm not talking about that part. I'm talking about requiring it, getting it. It's already there. You just have to know to activate it.
Yeah, it's there until you beat the game once, and then you come back and it's like, oh, actually, there's a mysterious Earth and Cage portal here now. Go into that, and that all just felt super sloppy to me.
No, I feel like I disagree on that in regards.
I get where you're coming from because you think it was part of the plan all along. I don't. I don't think it was part of the plan. I think Reverie was doing damage control for the end of 4.
I guess the only reason I don't feel that way is because I guess I'm comparing it to, and maybe I shouldn't, but maybe I just am, how the MCU was doing it up to Endgame, where at the end of a decent amount of the Marvel movies, you would get a little extra scene at the end, right? And it basically became tradition to stay in the theater after the credits roll because you know you're going to get something extra. And Cold Steel 4 kind of felt that way, where it's like, this is your end game equivalent.
I think there's a difference between a post-game scene and beating the last boss 3 times and getting worse endings every time you do it.
That's another thing. I disagree that Cold Steel 4's.
I think Cold Steel 4's first ending. I think their first ending was the best one. I think it was a mistake to unkill characters, and that at the final ending, terrible precedent to set. I don't know. It took all the dramatic conclusion away from the game.
You know, I agree with Tarks on that one, but at the same time, I was really grateful for the good ending, the true ending, and seeing everybody all happy and everybody at the wedding and whatnot. It was really cool. But yeah,
that was super sweet. Like, yeah. I can't deny. Hey, you see that come up on the screen? Kevin appears in the game. Wow, they didn't forget him. It feels awesome, right? But there was so much more power and meaning to me in the first ending.
Well, here's the thing. Firstly, Reverie let us know that the first bad ending that we saw is still technically canon. It did happen.
Yes.
It's not like
all the endings are canon now, and that's why I consider Reverie doing damage control. I don't think that was part. I don't think it was part of the plan from the beginning.
Let me finish though.
Yeah, go ahead.
In regards to Rean as a protagonist, since the very beginning of his characterization, there was this overwhelming urge to self-sacrifice himself.
I'm aware. Go on.
And he showcased that since the beginning of Cold Steel 1, when he jumped in front of Marcus and Eustace when they were fighting to, protect them. So he's been showcasing that this is a self-sacrificing thing throughout the story. And as the story progresses, he tries to understand that he needs to rely on his friends and not self-sacrifice himself for quote-unquote the greater good or whatnot. And by the end of Cold Steel 4, the bad ending, him self-sacrificing himself after going through, at that point, 4 long JRPGs of his friends telling him, don't handle this by yourself, rely on us. And then for him to just go ahead and self-sacrifice himself anyway, if that was the ending, I probably would have felt that there was this you never learned type of character development.
I disagree. I think it adds a lot of nuance to his character arc. He can learn that self-sacrifice is anyway. I do think the necessity of self-sacrifice, even despite everything that you learned, leaves a much bigger impression, and I think it would do a lot of good for the characters that get left behind. I don't see it as undoing his character arc at all, or leaving like an unsatisfactory ending. The way they shoehorned a way out for him, like after the credits roll, I thought was really sloppily handled, and it continued. Like, one of the things I dislike most about the series, and I do love the series, but the get out of jail free card that's like always in play. It was after such a strong, powerful, and emotionally impactful ending, going back to that get out of jail free card where everybody who did die is just back to life again.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I respond to that?
That deflated the entire ending for me.
Okay, so let me respond to that. Okay, I understand that being a critique on Cold Steel 4 and the ending and all of that stuff in regards to characters dying, and you use the word everyone. which that might not
Okay,
be.
not everybody. I know you've done this in the Cold Steel 4 spoiler review where you go through the series and count everybody who died and never came back, but it happens too much.
No, I
And that's
understand
the
it.
problem.
I understand it happens too much, but I think you also have to take into consideration the overall amount of characters that we have. So it's like when you take that into consideration, on top of the fact that, once again, even though we probably wanted, well, yeah, a decent amount of people wanted more characters to die in Cold Steel 4. It doesn't change the
No,
fact.
I don't care about characters dying. I want them to stop undying and get hand waved away when they get resurrected.
Right,
or,
exactly.
shoehorned in to come back.
That takes away from it because I know going to like a manga like Fairy Tail, they kept doing it. Like a character kept looking like they were gonna die. They may have been dead for a chapter, then they come back. Then there's another character,
I feel
other than
there's
another
more.
saga.
There's more characters that. Okay, when you use the word undying, are you talking about just the overarching trope of the audience thinking that a character is dead, but they're not, and everything that falls under that umbrella regardless of how it's executed?
No, at times the characters are legitimately dead. Like Milliam was legitimately dead.
Yeah. And how
Yeah,
many times did that occur though?
that Milliam died and got brought
No,
back once. I think she only died once.
no, I'm
But,
talking
like,
about I'm talking about characters that
at the
died
end
and
of that
came
at
back.
the end of that game, it happened to at least 2 characters, and that was enough to really deflate the ending for me.
Yeah, I think at that point it obviously depends on how much the player is willing to accept. For me, going into Cold Steel 4 and seeing how many characters did die in comparison to all of the entries before it, I feel like it was enough for me. It's not like the previous games didn't do this. I understand they didn't do it to the same degree because obviously this is the climax and all of that stuff. But I think when they were sitting down and thinking about the ending that they probably wanted to do for Cold Steel 4, it's probably similar to Cold Steel 2 in that aspect where they did admit at the end of Cold Steel 2 that they didn't want to leave the game on such a depressing note, which is why apparently you get that extra part of Cold Steel 2, which felt more of like a happy and wholesome ending in comparison to the ending of Pro dying.
Do you think that Rean dying is a depressing ending?
No, let me finish.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, so with them saying, okay, so at the end of Cold Steel 2, the first quote unquote the first ending where you see Crow dying, Rean seeing that Osborn is his father.
Oh,
and
Crow's not dead.
No.
That's just
Crow,
another character, all right? It's another undead character.
At the time, Crow was dead. Crow got brought back. Doesn't change the fact that he was dead before. Crow was dead.
Okay,
Before
so
Cold Steel 3 was even made, at that time, he was dead.
We'll add Crow to the list of characters who actually died and got unkilled in one single game story arc.
Yeah, there's something to say. There's something to be said about Crow in regards to him coming back, especially in comparison to his previous version, which I would say is Luve. On top of the fact that there's even with him dying and coming back, if you look at character polls, Crow is still at like number 5. So even with it,
are you talking about like he's a popular character, so they should bring him back?
I'm talking about more so them basically recreating Luve, because if you look at a lot of the stuff that Luve went to and compare it to Crow is Luve 2.0.
Yeah, no, I'm asking you what he's number 5 means.
Oh,
and what the relevance
and how much. Well,
and what the relevance is that to the story writing.
The relevance to the story writing that I'm saying is that I personally don't necessarily care to see another Luve. We already had Luve. We already had the character that was with white hair, had a bad backstory in regards to where he came from. It's very close to the main protagonist. You fight him throughout the game. He becomes your ally at the end and then dies.
I don't think that's the point of what we're arguing there.
We're talking about Crow as a character right now, but my
no, we're
point
talking
is
about deaths. We're talking about characters
and
dying and
I
then
understand.
coming back.
I know, and this has relevance. This is why I'm mentioning it. Luve died. When we talk about characters throughout the entire franchise, there's one character that, when you say character death, the first character that comes to mind is Luve. It happened all the way back in Trails in the Sky second chapter. And people love Luve, well written, all of that stuff. The point is, Crow isn't Luve. Crow is Crow. Crow has his own character arc, and although the foundation is similar to Luve,
I'm really confused because you brought up Luve to set him up to tear him down as not being Crow, but nobody here said he was Crow.
we're talking about Crow Armbrust here.
Yeah, not Luve. I don't know why we're back to Luve.
I agree with you, Tarks. I don't know where you're going with this.
No, I think you're off on a wild tangent. I'm gonna run a phrase by you that you've probably heard before. It's called "kill your darlings." It's okay to have a good character.
We did kill our darling Luve.
No, we don't though, because every time a darling gets killed in this series, they get unkilled because they're number 5 in some poll somewhere, and that totally deflates the actual tension and like the drama of this universe.
Exactly. Like,
and even when they're not like killed and they just appear dead for a little while, it's kind of like hand waved away. Oh, all those people in that ship died. Wow, shit just got real serious. Oh wait, they actually just opened up a portal and escaped.
Yeah, that really made me upset. I was thinking they were dead. Olivier and I forgot his name, Muller. I thought they were dead, and it just turns out, oh, everybody's still alive. Oh, that's great. But yeah, the series does that.
Look,
one too many times.
I'm not saying that isn't
question.
an issue. Go ahead, Recon.
I was going to say a quick question for in that same game. Did you guys ever have, and this is for all three of you, did you guys ever have that moment where you questioned that Arianrod and Osborne would remain dead, or like that they would, if they would be brought back at any point because of what happened with Crow, because of what happened with Milliam? Did you guys?
I feel like those are two different things because Osborne is like he's like the big boss for the most part. Like, I literally don't mean big boss Solid Snake, but big boss of the entire series. When we have characters that were constantly spending, game after game, battle after battle and whatnot, and they die off, like, okay, from a story aspect, I don't expect them to come back. That's a real meaningful, impactful death. Osborne dying and have him come back, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's like a big boss. He's like the big boss of the series. I expect him to come back for like a battle or two or something like that. And that's just for any RPG or anything like that. I would say.
I think that's a trope I'm sorry, go ahead, Tarks.
There's also that thing too where like, even if you do consider they might come back or you don't consider they might come back, like if you see them dead or you don't see them dead, because this has happened like enough throughout the series, it's not even really worth giving the thought to anymore. They'll just spring whatever they want on you without a moment's notice. And like at times it can lead to some hype moments and it's really cool, but like other times it does really deflate the gravity of the situations.
I feel like the only time I personally felt quote unquote deflated when a character died and then they did come back was the initial Crow death in Cold Steel 2, because in regards to deaths up to that point, I felt like that was the hardest hitting death in this series since Luve. And this is why I'm bringing it back to Luve. There is a lot of parallels when it comes to the characterization of Luve and when it comes to Crow. And I'll talk about this more when it comes to another character. We will talk about that there's parallels too. It seems that Trails likes to, I don't want to say rehash, but when they create a character, especially in the Cold Steel arc and moving forward, they definitely have parallels in regards to their character path to a character they already made in a previous entry. And Crow and Luve is one of those examples. I'll give another example when we talk about that character, those other two characters. But my point is, although the foundation is the same, the ending is different, and I'm not saying that it's handled perfectly or it's handled in a way that everyone can be satisfied with. I know some people that actually don't like Luve, so it's like obviously it's one of those things where it's like some people like it, some people won't. This is storytelling, you know. It's not something that is perfect. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to the Crow death in Cold Steel 2 and him coming back in Cold Steel 3 with the mask, that's another parallel that he had with Luve, if anyone remembers. In Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter, even though Luve officially wasn't back, he was present in that game with a mask himself. So it's like, once again, it was a similar parallel to Luve that they had. The only difference is Luve was actually still dead, and this was more so like an illusion that was going on, connected to Joshua still.
And Crow
Kevin.
also wasn't the only one with one of those masks on. There's a good.
No,
handful
I
of
understand
characters.
that, and that's actually one of my biggest critiques with not even Cold Steel at this point, because since Luve was the first one to come back with a mask, it's been happening since Sky. But that is something that I consider a bigger critique than quote unquote the curse critique or whatnot, is the whole masks thing. I hope moving forward after the Erebonia arc, we don't see any more characters come back with a mask on their face, because that is actually a big critique that I have, especially how they handled it in Cold Steel 3 at the end of Cold Steel 3 when Crow's mask just drops and he's like, "Oh, I remember everything."
So
I don't
wait
see
a
a lot of
minute.
Yeah, and it's like, what do you mean you remember? You were dead. You were literally dead.
See now, I feel like that's something in Crow's characterization that is, in my opinion, heavily worth critiquing. But his overall path as a character and how it's laid out all the way to where we have him now, him dying and coming back isn't something that I necessarily put that much of a critique on for him.
But wait, do you understand that like it's bad to kill off a character, then in the next game bring him back? That happens a couple of times. So
I understand. I understand
so that's our real beef with it. Like we don't like when you kill off a character, seemingly kill off a character, and then you bring them back. Do you think that it's like one thing to kill off a character and have that feeling of the character might be dead, but then they still bring him back? Like they bring him back in another game, in another entry. Is that feeling worth having in the long run than the feeling of that character permanently being dead?
I think that depends on who you ask, because obviously some people in that moment, when that character dies, like when Luve died or when Crow died, they have, the feeling that the game wanted you to feel, them dying and you feeling a despair within that. With them coming back and you having this feeling of deflation, or at least I feel like everybody had the deflation when quote unquote Crow came back. When I had the feeling of deflation during that time, the next thought that came to my head is, okay, what are you going to do with this character now that they've been brought back? When you look at the overarching story that has to do with the Divine Knights and how they set up how its pilot is directly connected to the Divine Knights, and how
then you shouldn't kill off the character.
Well, that's the thing.
You shouldn't kill off the character. If you're just going to bring him back.
Hold up. Let me finish. When it comes to how they set up the Divine Knights and the system to how the Divine Knights are connected to its pilots, and how their mortality is directly connected to the lore that is connected with the Divine Knights. If you're someone who is sitting there and you're writing the story for this arc, and knowing that this is a mechanic that has to do with the Divine Knights, and the Divine Knights have been here since Cold Steel 1, and you are probably someone that's going to do this trope of characters dying and coming back, it's like, I'm not saying it's the easy bait to use because you already had this particular feature connected to the Divine Knights and pilots, so let's use Crow as a character that we kill off, but bring back because we have this feature that we have with the Divine Knights, and also someone can debate maybe this was something that they since they didn't tell us that this was a feature of the Divine Knights, maybe they added this in Cold Steel 3 and 4 so that they can bring them back. I'm not saying that that couldn't have happened too. There's a possibility that they could have added it after the fact, but it's also a possibility that it was there all along. I think that's something that we won't be able to 100% confirm unless Falcom tells us itself.
Falcom has a design by edition mentality, so anytime they want something cool to happen in the plot, they go back to an earlier point in the story and establish details for that. So it probably wasn't the plan from the beginning, but it was the plan in the finished product.
And I feel like in the plan in the finished product in regard to the Divine Knights, I don't think it was handled as sloppily to the point where I feel like it's something that was poorly written. That's what I'm seeing.
Everything you just said, though, sounds like sweeping stuff under the rug to me. I will say every time a character comes back, the consequence of death gets lesser and lesser.
Exactly.
And you need that consequence of death to maintain the drama of the universe. Every time a character seems like they're in mortal danger now, it's going to hit less and less.
Exactly. Death is permanent. It's final. It is a very vital story point. When you take away that, you get Dragon Ball Z for the most part. You don't want to do that.
This is a bell that you just can't unring at this point. Like it's kind of just become a flaw in the universe.
I understand where you're coming from that. And apparently Falcom heard that as well. And they already said, and we're going to have to play Trails Through Daybreak. I think Recon has already played it, so he probably knows. But they already said,
goddamn.
Yeah. Point is,
I'm
they already
completely caught up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they said that moving forward, that is a trope that they're going to... I can't remember their words verbatim, whether it was they're not going to do that trope anymore or if they're going to do it far less. But they did say that they are aware of that and they're moving forward. We are going to see.
That's part of like why for me, Reverie felt like damage control and like course correction for like how I do like Cold Steel 4. Okay, like there's fluffy fat points in the middle that just kind of drag, and I don't like the execution of the ending. I do like the game, but like Reverie feels like it was trying to fix what Cold Steel established that people did not take to that kindly.
Let me get back. Let me just mention that whole self-sacrificing character arc in regards to Rean. The only reason I personally like the fact that the self-sacrificing character trait that was in Rean since the beginning, like we said, was something that by the end was something that was moved to the side for, as I would call it, character development and relying on your friends and whatnot. Only reason I'm fond of that being used as a character development trait is because of the character in the story that they used as the character that has also the self-sacrificing trait and lived and died by it already exists through his very own father, Gileath Osborne. His story, if you look all the way back to its beginning, is riddled with self-sacrifice all the way to the very end. And when we see Gileath Osborne and Rean at the end of Cold Steel 4, Gileath Osborne, you know, in that scene where he's like slashing Ishmelga in half, and he's in that, I guess, dimension area, and he's talking to Gileath Osborne, and Gileath Osborne says to his face, I see, even though I did not raise you, I see that you have this self-sacrificing trait in you. You got that from me. He didn't say it like that verbatim, but he basically definitely said that. And I like the fact that both of them had that. One of them went down that path, and one of them didn't. And they're different. And they both can be respected from a character writing standpoint, that they went different paths, even though they started with the similar trait. And that's similar to, like I was mentioning with Luve and Crow, to which and where a lot of their paths were handled similar, but the end result was different. I'm not saying that I don't want to see a character go down a specific character path and then watch another character go down the exact same character path. If it's both handled well, it's fine for you to do it exactly the same. But I would prefer if it was something that started off similar but went in a different way. And in both scenarios,
here's the one big thing though. You're treating it like a binary. Rean can still come out at the end as a not self-sacrificing character and have to face the reality that sacrifice is actually necessary for once.
I understand that, and he's been doing that all the way up to this point.
No, because all those other times, sacrifice was not necessary. He can learn that lesson and then learn the reality that sometimes it is necessary. That's another layer on top of the arc that you say you like, but that extra layer of reality actually adds a whole lot of nuance to that character arc.
I understand where you're coming from, and that's another thing. I guess I feel like there's something to.
I'm just saying, if he
unpack and
dies at
debate.
the end, we can't say that undoes his character arc. He can still learn those lessons. It's not a binary, as in, oh, he is self-sacrificing or he isn't. He cannot be self-sacrificed and still have to sacrifice. So we can't really say it's the same arc twice, right?
Okay.
I think there's a debate to be had there.
Okay, hold on here. Recon, do you have anything to bring to this conversation here? This topic in particular?
I just think that pulling it back to Reverie, regardless of whatever took place there at the end of Cold Steel 4, and the true ending and the original or normal ending before the true ending, I think the most important thing is that it led us to what would then take place within this game, and the way in which they went about taking care of a lot of that stuff. I sort of compare it to Evangelion in a sense, where Evangelion ended, and then it created another ending to sort of appease the fans / sort of fill in certain holes that were still meant to be filled from the original story. That's kind of the way I look at Reverie as well. I'm glad that they took the route they did in Cold Steel 4, because it gives I've been with this series for, especially if somebody's been with it from the very beginning, that hype portal scene at the very end of the game that wouldn't have happened. That same thing to what happened in Zero and Azure. If we didn't have Estelle and Joshua, we would have died, like they did at in Zero before Kia reversed and created the other timeline. In this case, sort of similar, where if they don't show up, I'll die there at the end. And so it's staying thematically consistent there. But what Reverie does is it brings Rean, Rufus, and Lloyd into the picture and explores what happens when you have to confront the reality that's been placed in front of you, the reality that they all attempted to escape from, in front of them once more. And so, especially in Rean's case, that's a whole center of his character arc, where he has to come face to face with the version of himself who was sacrificed, the individual who had to go up into space in order to and see everything that he had done before his, did I make the right decision? You have Ishmael Gareen looking at himself, looking at the individuals that whom he once loved. He's looking at, like, the first time that we saw him actively speak, he was talking to Juna, Musei, and the rest of Class 7 there. He was like, man, I'm so happy that you guys are doing well, and what we're seeing there is so much regret and guilt, which is why I'm so glad that they went with the route of the true ending, because it would give us this opportunity, regardless of whether they planned it or not, is irrelevant. I think what is relevant is what they did with it in Reverie, where they brought it back. It made Rean forced him to come face to face with the original version of himself, the version of himself who wanted to sacrifice everything in order to accomplish that greater purpose. And he had to overcome that. He had to come to a decision himself, which was from Cold Steel 1 all the way to Reverie, of placing his happiness and placing himself and those that he loves over his, similar to Osborne and with his door in that parallel, over that desire to want to help others at the stake of his own health, similar to what Randy had to learn. And so when Rean has that moment of I'm so I'm happy now, like this is the decision that I've made. This is who I am. This is what I learned from Matthias at the beginning of Reverie, as like he says in the middle, I believe it's in Act 4, where he says that although my forms may change, and that's a literal meta thing, although he's changed from Cold Steel 1 in character design all the way until this game, every game his character design changes to signify how he develops as a character visually. I am still me. So when he confronts the self whom sacrificed himself, and he comes to the decision of I am going to be selfish in this moment, and I'm going to prioritize the happiness and the memories that I've made while this guy was gone, and then sacrifice that individual, take him out of the picture, I think to me, it's my favorite moment in the entire series because of what happened at the end of Cold Steel 4. Like, if that wouldn't have happened, that's why if we would have had this conversation when Cold Steel 4 ended, I would have still been on either of your sides because I was still conflicted myself, and that was my favorite game in the series up until that point, for a variety of reasons. But now that we have the Reverie context of what Rean had to deal with and what the assimilation was doing, and not just Rean, but also Rufus and the other characters here that had to deal with the consequences of what took place there during the Great Twilight. I feel like, regardless, like I said earlier, of whether it was planned or not, Reverie did a great job of pulling all of those plot points in here and allowing each individual character to, at least the prominent characters, to shine with all of that being said and have their finest moments here within this game. So in regards to the Rean and the Ishmelga Rean stuff, with the difference between the true ending and the original ending, I think that was almost kind of like a meta commentary there at the end of him having to overcome himself there. But those are my thoughts on it. That's one of the reasons why I love Reverie so much, is because of what they managed to do with those two original endings from Cold Steel 4, making them both a part of this timeline, and then exploring that through characters like you guys brought up earlier, who should and should not be dead. And on that topic, just for a little bit, coming from the anime and manga community, I'm used to characters not dying, so it doesn't really affect
Especially in
me
One
as
Piece.
much. Right, you feel me? Like with One Piece, with Naruto, Dragon Ball, like I come from all that stuff, so I'm used to it. I'm not defending in that regard, but I do think that because the story is very, very similar to those, and I'm for sure they've taken a lot of inspiration from those types of stories too.
Definitely.
It is really interesting how, even with all those fake out deaths, stuff like Osborne's death, Arian Rod's death, Louve's death, they can still hit. Like they can still
Vulcan as well in Cold Steel too.
right. They can still hit extremely hard, even with all those fake out deaths. And to me, that's even more impressive, considering, like you guys were saying earlier, with all these fake out deaths, to me at least, I'd be like, man, eventually this is gonna get really, really old really soon. Especially the way they continue to bring back these characters. But they always brought them back, at the very least, bring Crow back into the picture. They brought him back with a purpose. And I thought that was really interesting, the way they explored that. But in regards to just characters dying and the impact that still has in the story, I think that's still there. At the very least, looking back on Cold Steel 4, with specifically Arianrod, Osborne, and Valimar, because Valamar's hit me the hardest whenever he left there at the end. But Osborne and Arianrod being such prominent characters for games on games on games, it sort of felt very surreal whenever they went out. I really thought they were going to come back too. And so when you don't play as Arianrod, specifically in this, I thought in this game, in Reverie, we were going to be like, oh, we're going to get a playable Osborne, playable Arianrod. We didn't.
Yeah, basically
And
like
then-
how we got at the end of Cold Steel 2 when Crow was
Right.
dead, but we still got to use him
Right.
in the original Reverie. Yeah, no, I agree.
Exactly.
Valimar did sort of come back though.
He did.
That's why I said,
Yeah.
oh, like he came back
Yeah.
too. Like they all
Yeah,
come back.
even in that list you gave, 33% of that cast came back. Mind you,
No, you're absolutely
33% was 1 out of the 3, but still.
Right. No, and like I said, I 100% agree with that. Is that was one of the glaring things about not just this story, but the stories that inspired this story. That remains a glaring flaw is the unwillingness of permadeath. But
Yeah.
I
And
think similar.
Now, I know I harped on it, but I will say, like,
Mhm.
I often do feel the laws of badassery and hype supersede the laws of logic.
For sure.
Especially, like, in the moment. There were just a few times where, like, sometimes bringing those characters back did not hit badass or did not. It just
Mhm.
didn't hit right for me. But
Right.
it was only a few times.
For sure.
Yeah, I can understand it hitting differently for everyone, and everyone's obviously the way they feel shouldn't be invalidated. That's just how they feel. We all grew up different, all have different experiences. Going off of what Recon was saying.
So wait, before you go on, Riku, as a person who's writing, you're a writer. Do you feel that that death can be handled in a way that one character dies, they come back,
I think
and that's fine?
I think it depends on if even if you don't know what you want to do with the character that you brought back, I think if you're critiquing an overarching story and you're looking at that character's arc from beginning to end, I feel like the best way to analyze that is to look at what did they do with that character by the time they were fully done with them, and critique them based off of that, not based off of a point in their character arc, which may have a trope in there that you aren't a fan of. In my own writing, I'm not in the trope of bringing anyone back. If they're dead, they're dead. So I'm not even following that trope.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to feel like.
Yeah, no.
But you
I'm
think
not,
that? Do you think
I'm
that
not
either
saying-
way, it's not like a bad storytelling thing to kill somebody off and then bring them back constantly? You don't think that's just
I
how
think
anybody
like
else's style goes?
I think like any other trope, it all depends on how you execute it. When it comes to the death trope, whether we look at TV shows, anime/manga, or JRPGs in specific, it is obviously probably one of the strongest tropes that you can do to leave an impact on the consumer, which is why it's a trope that is still here today. I think there's also another side of the coin that hasn't really been explored. That
Is that slow? You talk? No,
believe-
okay, go ahead.
yeah, no, because I'm trying to like make sure I'm trying to
You're
make
doing
sure
like a William Shatner thing here, man.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Started.
it had to
I'm
be
trying.
said.
I'm trying to explain it as the best as possible. And, the brain is processing as I talk. So I'm sorry if it comes out that way, people. But I just follow along what I'm saying. Basically, we have explored the character deaths in a lot of stories, and a lot of them have handled them well. There's also another side of that when it comes to character deaths that haven't handled it well. Some examples that I can give you is The Walking Dead, for example, where when we were watching the first couple of seasons and character deaths were happening, the tension was there and it was good and all this other stuff. But I personally don't know anyone that I talk to that is following The Walking Dead right now, because that is a series that went a bit too far when it came to the killing of characters, to the point where in their story currently right now, it doesn't seem like they have many characters, or if any at all, that is worth caring about, because we know that they are probably going to be died and replaced again. So I feel like a debate can be had on the side of the killing of characters and replacing them with someone else, where obviously, like anything, it can also be executed in a way that doesn't hit well for people, right? So
Yeah, The Walking Dead was terrible for that. I used to keep up with the graphic novels, but every time we'd get new characters and they seemed cool, they'd be dead in like a chapter.
another example I will say
It just
is,
left me with nobody interesting. So
yeah, another example I would give is Game of Thrones, where the beginning of Game of Thrones, spoiler for Game of Thrones, I guess, Stark is a character that we followed all the way up to that point where he dies. And that was a big one. It was handled very well. Good job, right? But after that, George R. R. Martin currently right now says that one of the big reasons as to why he is struggling with the Winds of Winter is because up to that point in the story, he was killing off characters for the sake of the shock factor and the impact. And apparently, when he did kill off that character, it did hit. But he said that where he's writing right now, he wrote himself into a brick wall where a character that he previously killed would be perfect for getting the story out of the situation that he wrote himself in. And you could say, oh yeah, well that's your fault for not, I guess, writing, far ahead to see who you should and shouldn't kill, so you're not in that situation. But me mentioning that is just showcases that sometimes, if you don't plan it out well, killing someone and keeping them dead for long format storytelling especially isn't something that really meshes well with long format storytelling. A lot of long format storytelling stories that I've seen, they definitely seem to lean on two sides of the spectrum. One, they either kill too many characters to the point where you don't care about the long format story going on anymore and you fall off, or they don't kill enough and you fall off because nobody's really dying, right?
Well, that's why death is such an important concept in writing and any sort of media. You really got to make sure that the death matters, it counts, and that you're executing it correctly. You play all willy nilly with it, it loses its meaning entirely. But listen, I don't want to get too far on this death thing. We've been on this for a while.
Yeah.
Let's. I think we're gonna on this one. This is a agree or disagree type situation. I want to move on to something else. I apologize for cutting you off there, but
no, I understand.
We gotta move on. Get back to Reverie itself.
Can we move into? Sorry, can we just move into like something super simple here? I just want to know where everybody ranks Reverie in the series.
That's a great question.
We'll start with you then.
I've been sitting on this for a while. I beat the game back in 2020. So I've been, I've through multiple different just playthroughs and thinking about the entire series. This stretch right here from Cold Steel 3, Cold Steel 4, Reverie, and then Daybreak. They rotate a lot for me for several different reasons. But because I would say out of my top 15 favorite moments in the series, Reverie has like 4 of them. Because of that, I've really been thinking about putting it at number 1. And like I said, it's difficult because something like Cold Steel 3, for example, is like the most King Recon thing ever made. It's my type of structure. It's my type of way of telling a story. It's a great, just simplicity and excellence. It's so good. But then something like an Azure, for example, is a great way of concluding a story that I really appreciate too. It was really difficult to rank these games, but I feel like this one takes my favorite thing about Trails, which is the character, and allows each and every single one of them to shine, at least the prominent ones, in ways that I was not expecting. So many of them, but in particular my favorites. My favorite characters in the series, which up until this point are like Rean, Ren, Lloyd, Randy, like all these awesome characters. They got so many of their greatest moments here. In particular, if I could just highlight, since it's a Spoilercast, gotta remember it's a Spoilercast. If I could just highlight two, with Rean and Lloyd, I think the Lloyd fist bump, with Ishmelga Rean, is one of the most powerful moments, and it was built up for years. It was built up from the end of Cold Steel 2, until that moment right there with the fist bump, where everything just it feels like that's the culmination of Lloyd's entire character arc. And then when he has the moment with Rufus, directly after, it's like that's Lloyd's character. It's wrapped in a bow. You can't get any higher than
was
this.
the Rufus moment right after that the for your countless crimes you're under arrest?
Yes.
But
Yes.
worst of all, for not knowing how truly loved you really are.
Yeah, right, dude.
Yeah.
Such a great moment, especially coming from Lloyd.
Cheesy as hell, but like the cheese
Yes,
completes that fucking sandwich.
it does, bro, and that's why I feel the way that I do about the true ending of Cold Steel 4, because I like cheesy stuff. Maybe that's why I love the anime and manga, those types of stories as much as I do. It's because the cheesy stuff is for me. When I think to this game, for example, there's so much cheese all over. It's a triple cheeseburger. But man, give it to me. You know what I mean? I'm there.
Oh no, yeah,
And,
hell yeah. I'm
you
all
feel
for
me?
it.
You feel me? So like that. This game provides that in all three routes. Rufus has a ton of those, which is great. But going back to Rean for a sec, which is my favorite Trails character. Even before Reverie, but when Reverie came out, it sort of completed the sandwich where I was just, I was floored, because you normally don't get moments of introspection. And specifically because this is a trope within Japanese culture, is to make the sword user, the sword wielder in either a video game or a manga or a TV drama, whatever it is. They're the introspection character. They're the character that is constantly reevaluating themselves, wanting to be better, for themselves and for other people. Rean takes that trope to the next level because you can actually play as him in a video game, and you play with him for 5 games, for God's sake. So you see how that introspection evolves from game to game to game. But to literally have him face himself, I feel like it's one of the coolest decisions that they could have done, because it is something you can only do within a video game. Similar to whenever he first unlocked the Divine Blade form in Cold Steel 4, this time around, literally faces, like I talked about earlier, the Ishmelga version of himself, the alternate reality version of himself. And it's just so cool the way that was handled, because it was built up throughout the course of the entire game leading up to that point, which is just him and his continuous, like it's been throughout the entire journey up until this point, the Rean that we know and love, oblivious to everyone around him and his own emotions first and foremost. When he finally accepts that, while taking out himself, it's one of the coolest things ever. I've just, it's so emotional. And when he calls out to Valimar, once again, another one of those, like, not just hype and cheesy, but man, this is why Trails is Trails to me.
Valimar the Ashen Knight summoning is,
Dude, come on,
is so
like,
fucking hype.
it's so
like,
hype. Heed my call, you know.
Like I would sit on the couch, and like anytime a scene like that would come around, I'd put my fucking hand up and say the line with it.
Yes, me too.
No, my wife would just be sitting next to me, fucking rolling her eyes. I'm like, you don't get it. You just don't get it.
Yeah, dude. Like that's the magic of this series, and I feel like Reverie has so many of those moments in the story, but also in the daydreams, where you're just like, this is why Trails is Trails. And
Yeah,
that's
like,
why it's like, it's so hard for me not to put this in number one.
on like, if we only look at like hype moments, like put it on a hype meter, Reverie is also for me probably like at the top. But like considering other things besides hype meter, Reverie is probably going to fall at like, I don't know, 3 for me, maybe, without giving it
That's
too
really
much
high.
thought. Oh no,
Really
it's
high.
really high. Yeah, Reverie's one of the best for me personally. Like I might have some issues with like some hand wavy, like wishy-washy story stuff coming off of CS4, but like I feel like it done a lot to validate CS4 without ruining anything that might come next.
Is there any? I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I was just
go
gonna
on.
ask so you could continue. Is there anything in particular, from like any of the routes or the structure that really sticks out to you,
Like
for placing it that high?
in a good way? Like
In a good way, a bad way, whichever way, but like that allows it to be at that
no,
that
there's
pedestal. 'Cause
just
3 in
a
this
lot
series
of
is
it.
high.
So on one hand, like I'm a really big fan of just like conclusive entries in like movies or shows or book series or whatever. And this one's like it's pretty damn conclusive. It felt really nice to finally reach the end of all these character arcs.
Right.
But then there's also like just those hype moments with like Noelle busting in on a bike into a burning building.
yeah.
Fuck, and like most of that was up to cutscene direction, right? Which
Mhm.
cutscene direction is way better in this game than the previous 4. But no, there's just a lot of moments like that. Just really hype, cool shit going on that, and it is a spoiler cast. I think everybody in the chat's going to agree with me. Sorry, chat group panel. When we eventually bring back the mech battle,
Oh,
like right at the end, like they hold that out on you the entire time.
Yep.
And they don't blue ball you. It feels so good, man.
It does,
Like to
dude.
finally get there, and I don't know, stuff like that. It just really it catapults this game. This game really punched way above what I thought it was going to be able to.
Awesome.
But anyway, Reverie's probably like somewhere around 3 for me overall. But if anybody else wants to weigh in on that,
Yeah, I'll say it's probably it's high up there for me. I still think I'm gonna have to go with Cold Steel 3 being my favorite, only because it was the first time everybody came together and started interacting with each other, and I felt that was pretty epic. And then like 4 does it too. It's still awesome to see, and then Reverie as well. But yeah, there's nothing beats that first moment where we're in the what was it, Courageous, I believe.
Yes.
And everybody
Yep.
all meets up with each other in that big hallway, and then they start interacting
man.
with each other. I'm like, oh my god, what would this person say to this person? It's so great, so crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm putting I'll put Reverie up there, but I still hold Cold Steel 3 as being my personal favorite.
Dude, before Riku goes on your thoughts on Cold Steel 3. That's been my favorite for so long for a lot of the reasons that you stated. Like it's just maybe it's because you caught up on that game too, right? If I'm mistaken, that's what you said earlier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the localized
yeah.
version is, yeah.
Right, the localized version. So like I remember being caught up to Cold Steel 3, and then having to wait for Cold Steel 4. But like just playing the games and getting to Cold Steel 3, and you see like all of these characters that you know and love throughout the course of the story, and it feels like everything is finally converging, and like every arc in that game is so well like paced, from each individual chapter. You have character returning here, character returning here, character returning here, and it's really the first time they did that on a consistent basis. Because obviously they did it bringing back Estelle and Ren and them, and Crossbell, and then in Cold Steel they brought back Lloyd. But this was really, Cold Steel 3 was really the first one of like, oh wow, like man, they are pulling from literally everything. Even little old Cerebus girl is coming back in this game.
It was
It's
really
crazy.
cool too in CS3 because you're seeing a lot of these characters for the first time in this new graphic style. So it's like, oh, maybe we didn't get to see them in CS1 and 2 because that was way too many fucking assets to build for one game.
Right.
But like we're here at 3 where we're recycling half the assets anyway. So like, just go to town and build all those characters everybody wants to see again. No, CS3 is probably second place for me, and I think like OW is like right above it. So like OW 3, Reverie, and then maybe like Sky second chapter, I guess.
I mean, that's a great list.
Riku?
In regards to Reverie, I'm looking at my list right here. I have Reverie ranked at number 4. so it's my fourth favorite. And then, and my favorite games of all time, it's ranked at number 13. So it's definitely up there for me. I absolutely love Reverie, as you can tell by the fucking playtime.
400 hours. Jesus Christ.
Like 300 of that was
I was aiming for 500, but I was like, I have exhausted. The only other thing that I could possibly do in this game to reach 500, and it'd be something that I'm working towards, I'm just not like meandering, running around, trying to build up the time, was going out of my way to obtain everyone's upgraded orb item, if you know what that is. You know, it's the little shards you get it, and there's this specific item only for that character that.
Oh yeah, those are
benefits
random.
the character.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like the RNG. You have to be running up and down the Reverie corridor.
Yeah.
Which I guess we can talk about the Reverie corridor here in a second. But that was the only other thing that I didn't do that I felt if I did this, I could reach 500. But by the time I reached, I was like, Michael, what are you doing? You played this game enough. Let's wrap. You did literally everything else. Just wrap it up here. 450. I stopped at 450. I was like, oh yeah, 450. That's a nice number. But apparently it clocked in at 451. I was like, you know what? I'll just tell people I played for over 450 hours.
There you go.
I'll just leave it there. So I just left it there. It's at 451. But yeah, Reverie. The only games I have. In my top 3 that Reverie missed out on, Azure, Cold Steel 2, and Cold Steel 4 are my top 3, with Reverie behind it.
Greatness.
And then second chapter, third, Cold Steel 3, Cold Steel 1, 0, third.
You say Cold Steel 2 at like second place?
Yeah, I love Cold Steel 2. Cold Steel 2 is my favorite.
That's an uncommon opinion, but like that game has one of the best climaxes.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, like I said, even though the deflation of Crow is felt when you start up Cold Steel 3 and you see this Azure Secret,
Who's that?
I'm not going to allow that to take away what I felt when I felt it in Cold Steel 2. And I'm personally someone, and I guess you see a similar thing where I keep on bringing up Crow. I'm actually someone in the minority that when Louve died in Trails in the Sky second chapter, it didn't hit that crazy for me, only because of the fact that I never got to use Louve. And then by the time we get Louve on our side, he's only there, he's only there to like use his Kernviter to break through the barrier for them to fight Weissman in second chapter. So it's like I respect and love him as a character, but the impact of him dying didn't hit the same way it did for me when it happened to Crow, someone that you did
I agree with that.
Work with him in Cold.
Crow.
You did have him in Cold Steel 1, right? You form a bond with him. His little funny line, and everyone remembers in Cold Steel 1. Show me them titties. Like Crow built up this good. He built up this good rapport with me in Cold Steel 1, that I didn't see with Louve in Trails in the Sky first chapter when he was Lawrence in that game with being the first character to have a mask, by the way, right? And you don't really get to see that much about Lawrence during that time. You really get to learn about him until second chapter. But with Crow and Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2, even though he's not one of your main characters, and some people debate, I didn't really get to love Crow that much for him to like hit it in Cold Steel 2. I heard that critique as well.
Really? Who said that? But
Lady Virgilia.
Who the freak?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about Lady Virgilia, but the point is,
she's good people. Come on.
No, she is good. She is good people, but that's just a critique. She made a whole video about how Crow didn't hit. Anyway, point is,
what? Okay, go ahead.
Maybe I'll show you that video later. But point is, for me, Crow hit harder in Cold Steel 1 and Cold Steel 2 in comparison to Louve and in Trails in the Sky first and second chapter, because of the fact that I felt more of a connection to Crow because of what we went through in Cold Steel 1 and the amount of times he shows up in Cold Steel 2 and you fighting him. You remember when you first see him in Ymir and you're in the Divine Knight once again fighting Crow and Ordine and you still fucking lose. And it's like, you still can't beat him. You still got to get better. He felt at that point, he was your Gary of like, Pokemon 1. He was always one step ahead of you. He was always better than you. Get better, get good, continue going. Like when it came to Luve and whatnot, you didn't get to fight Luve in Trails in the Sky second chapter till the end of the game. And you only really get to see him that one time when he beat Agate, So he was like he always felt like he was in the background, and you really didn't get to see all of the good stuff about Luve until him and Joshua fought at the end of Trails in the Sky second chapter, and that hit. But I'm saying in comparison to Rean and Crow, when you got to the end of Cold Steel 2 and Blue Destination, is it called Blue Destination? I think it's called Blue Destination. Blue Destination starts playing, and Rean and Crow are fighting once more, and Rean finally beats him. It hit. For me, it hit harder than when Joshua fought Luve. On top of the fact,
it's always hard when the canon love interest dies.
That's right.
Yo, I'm gonna get back to you on that here in a second. But like I said, there was a parallel in regards to like I feel like the way first and second chapter, and Cold Steel 1 and 2, that similarity between Luve and Crow, Joshua and Estelle, and all that stuff, and how both of those games kind of concluded. It felt very similar, and it felt like it was done in a way that impacted me more in Cold Steel 2, especially when you're like I said, after that fight with Rean and Crow, now you got to go up against the Vermilion Apocalypse. That final boss was fucking dope, and then after that, you get to go against the Vermilion Apocalypse in the Divine Knight battle with Valimar and Ordine, and it's your first time seeing Union/Deadly Domination. It's the first time you get to see it, and I'm playing all of this on my fucking Vita, and it's like,
Dude, the Vita
PlayStation Vita means life, baby. I'm gonna tell you this right now. I'm gonna tell you this right now because I remember it vividly. During that part, the Vita handled it smoothly. The only part the Vita didn't handle smoothly is when Viscount Arce was fighting Crow and Crow transformed into fire. What's going on? That's when the framer was like, "Ooh, my Vita kind of struggling here. This is crazy. Vita's struggling." But during that Divine Knight, everything was handled well on the Vita. But the point is, all of this was on my Vita. This is why Cold Steel 2 is my favorite Vita game. And I mentioned it in your video when everyone was talking about Persona 4 Gold, and I'm like, but Cold Steel 2 was right there.
Persona 4 Gold is a good game, man. That's
that climax was so good. And then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, Lloyd's here, and you're playing as Lloyd now. And like, what? Like, this is why Cold Steel 2 is ranked so high for me.
Okay, at the time when I first played Cold Steel 2, though, I got to that post-chapter sequence. I was like, who?
I understand that, especially as people who like. I understand what they were going for, and I love that part so much. Where it's like,
me too.
When you're using Lloyd, and you get at the end, and then you hear Rean's voice. That won't be necessary, and he comes in like, oh god, are we actually doing this? Him and Altina came, and they're like, "Oh, we're actually doing the protect." I love that trope so fucking much. Where it's like,
that's my favorite trope.
A previous protagonist comes back and he's fighting the current protagonist that you're using. I love that trope so much. It is hard to fuck that trope up. And like I said, once again, if there's one thing that Trails knows how to do well, it's take a trope that we like and do it very well. And this is, like I said, since this is the trope that it's hard to fuck up, they did it so well in that fucking part, man.
And then, like, I didn't know who Lloyd was when I played that part, but I still appreciated it just because Risha was there.
Yeah,
I like watching Risha.
Oh my gosh,
run through those corridors,
dude. Yeah, my favorite thing about that section is you're immediately brought back home with the Giro Front theme. Because like up until that point, Zero and Azure, at least for me on my Trails journey, that's when I of course I loved the first 3 games a lot. Like Zero and Azure just really hit for me. So being with Lloyd again in 3, and the way that he looks in this new in the new engine, I was like, nah, man, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, oh, what's going on here right now? I'm actually playing as Lloyd in in these new graphics. It was
It
Still
was
2 is
great.
such a special game. It's
So
the most anime video game ever made, and I love it for everything that it attempts to do. It's Gurren Lagann, it's Dragon Ball, it's Naruto,
and
it's everything.
and
So
similar to
good.
what Shadow was saying in regards to why he held Cold Steel 3 in the regard that he holds it in it, and it doing a lot of those nice crossover things. Cold Steel 2, I guess, was that for me in a similar way when it comes to those parts I'm mentioning right there. I know a lot of people weren't a fan of like the Reverie corridor, the beta Reverie corridor as I'm calling it in Cold at the end of Cold Steel 2. I was at a point when I was playing that on my Vita where I low key didn't want this game to end. So when I saw that there was this extra dungeon and you get to use all of these characters on top of like you get to play as Vita, Crow, to all these Lloyd, you could use them all in here. I was having a blast. So that's why Cold Steel was ranked so high. But let me bring this back to Reverie. One thing that I liked that Reverie did that I just praised Cold Steel 2 for, the whole you're using a protagonist against another protagonist. If there's one part of Reverie that I absolutely love so fucking much, is the part where Rean's crew is chasing C's crew in that underground little part, and then they meet in the garden, and then you have to fight them. And
Is that
once again,
where C unmasks?
Yeah, that's the fight where you fight. That's the part where C gets unmasked. But yeah, in that fight where you're using Rean's crew against C's crew, I was feeling it once more, where I'm like, oh man, this is different because back then it was a 2v2.
It's
Here
been a few months
squad
for me,
versus squad.
It's been a few months for me, but do you get to play that battle from both sides?
Yes,
Both
that's where I was
sides,
about to.
you do.
That's where I was about to go.
what I thought.
That's where I was about to go into. I was like, this is similar to how
And
when
the fucked up part though for the player, you're trying to win both sides.
Yeah, see, that's why I loved it so much. It's like, okay, back in Cold Steel 2, it's like, oh yeah, you get to use Lloyd and Risha against Rean and Altina, and back then, mind blowing. It's absolutely loved it. But here, it's like you're not using 2v2. This is a squad versus squad, and you're fighting them. And then once that fight is over, swap. I'm like, what? Now you're fighting against Rean's crew, and I'm like, what? There was one thing that
was really cool.
I wasn't expecting it. They haven't done that all the way up to this point. You either play as one side and it stays on that side. They were like, all right, round 2, swap. I'm like, what the fuck? I love this so much. This is fucking, that was peak for me. That's one of my favorite parts.
I know we're talking about like the hypest moments, but like, can I talk about like one of the moments that just so briefly like kind of got under my skin? There's one of the big fights in the game, close to the end. Everybody's showing up. Everybody reacts and they're like, "Look, Kevin's here too," and I'm like, "No fucking way, Kevin!" And then they only show his ship.
Merkava's flying in the background. Bro. I'm like, no, he's here, but we can't see him. Yeah, Falcon didn't make a model for him.
Blue
That's
balled
why.
again, man.
Oh
Blue balled again.
Every time, bro. Like that's one of the reasons why. Like I'm like, man, Owl still might have it. Owl still might be my number one because man, that's the only one where I was like, oh, Kevin's in the game and he's in the game. You know what I mean? It's like,
we don't get to use him, but he had an amazing part in Azure. I remember when Shadow was playing, because Shadow was streaming Azure, as far as I remember. He was streaming parts of his Azure playthrough, and this was a part in Shadow's, Trail's career where he was adamant about saying that you don't have to play Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter. Skip it. So when that part came up when that part came up in Azure and Kevin's there and Kevin's doing his thing, I was like, "What now, Shadow? He's relevant. He's here. Let's go." And he's like, "Whatever." But no, when I sit down and I critique each Trails game and I like give it a number, Azure's the only one that I critiqued and it came out still with a 10 out of 10. Out of all 10 of the games, that's the only one that came out with a 10. All of them are high. A lot of them are high 9s. That's the only one that has a 10 out of 10. So if I had to rate them critically speaking, Azure's number 1. But if we're going off favorites list, it's at number 3. But yeah, man.
What would be your number 1 favorites wise?
Oh yeah, favorites wise for me, it's Cold Steel 4. Because Cold Steel, like I said, all that gushing I did about Cold Steel 2, I think we all can agree. Cold Steel 3 is Cold Steel 1 on crack.
Cold Steel
that's why I
4
loved it
has
so
a lot
much.
of
Yeah,
CS2 identity.
Cold Steel 4 is Cold Steel 2 on crack. So if Cold Steel 2 was my initial number one, which it was, then Cold Steel 4 obviously becomes my new number one since it's Cold Steel 2 but better. Because that's how I see it. Cold Steel 3 is Cold Steel 1 but better. Cold Steel 4 is Cold Steel 2 but better. So
Whereas much as I have
speak.
problems with like some parts of Cold Steel 4, it still has some of my favorite series moments. Visiting the Black Workshop was like that was crazy to me.
Oh yeah, that chapter. That's the one of the strongest chapters in the franchise.
That's one of the greatest chapters in Trails history. That Fragments chapter when you get Rean out of there.
Oh my
That
gosh,
thing is crazy. Anytime a Trails chapter says Fragments or intermission, you know peak fiction.
It's weird because like it's weird. You are correct about that, but for some reason when I see that chapter, something in my head I'm like, this isn't a legit chapter. But then it always comes out like what you said, a fucking ridiculously peak chapter. But speaking of chapters, how did you guys handle the routes when it came to Reverie? Like, was there a specific route that you played all the way until they told you to stop, or did you like jump around? How did you guys handle those?
I have a very interesting thing with this. So when I first played this game, I played it with the spreadsheet, so I had to follow the spreadsheet. You were
playing it. You played it early. You didn't play the original. You didn't play the localized when it first came out, right? Your first playthrough was
back whenever after I finished Cold Steel 4, I went and did the spreadsheet. So my first playthrough, as much as because like I said, Rean's my favorite character, I was like, I'm always gonna pick him first, and I couldn't because I had to follow the spreadsheet. But I think that ended up better for me because I was able to experience everything sort of. I don't know if the person who made that spreadsheet intended it this way, but it felt like I played like the intended version of the game through that. So it ended up being a better experience. But whenever I replayed it with the localized version, it most certainly I did it in the however I wanted to, and every time that it would become available, I would just go to, all right, I'm feeling Lloyd right now, so let's go Lloyd, or I'm feeling Rufus right now, I'm gonna go Rufus, or whatever it is.
What about you, Shadow? I'm not sure if Shadow's here. Right? Oh, there he is. Shadow. Okay. Well,
is my mic working? My mic's not working.
We can hear you now.
You're there now.
Oh, okay, my bad.
Go ahead.
I pretty much played it. Whoever I felt like playing at the time, but I finished their part and then I moved on to somebody else. I didn't jump around like halfway through somebody's story and then go to somebody else. Nah, if I picked somebody's story, I stuck with them until I couldn't anymore.
Right.
What about you, Tarks?
I was sort of back and forth on things. Like when I started the game, I figured I'd swap around a lot, right? It didn't work out that way. Like immediately, I started. I think I know when I started up Lloyd's route, I found re-exploring Crossbell was kind of taking a little longer than I would have liked, so I switched over to somebody else for a while.
That little beginning part. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it just there was just a little too much time spent walking around there, and like it does set things up for like what comes next. But I was looking to get a little more into the meat a little faster. So like I don't know. I don't
Blake
think
did that too. Yeah,
I don't think I favored anybody. But like there would be random interruptions. Like I can access the corridor now with this party, so I'll switch to the other team until they're at the same point they can access the corridor. And then I'll just do all 3 corridors back to back or whatever, that sort of thing. But
yeah, it is very nice that in regards to executing the 3 routes, it felt like they gave you enough freedom to choose a route that you would like to play up to a certain point, because obviously story reasons. They handled it very well, because I heard I haven't played a lot of visual novels, but I heard this is a very popular structure in visual novels, right, Tarks?
Yeah, visual novels they do gate progression in a similar way. I'm not gonna say it's like one to one.
I was just talking about the routes in having you be able to like swap
Yeah,
between.
no, visual novels gate route progression, especially things like 999, like Virtue's
Yes.
Last Reward, that stuff. You'll hit a
Mostly
certain
cool.
point and then you have to go do another route for a while. This
Yeah.
sort of works the same.
I feel like Trails definitely benefited from this type of structure because of how many moving pieces this overarching story has and how many characters we are we are required to follow. This was a very good way to handle it. I remember I was talking to a friend who said, I hope this is only a Reverie thing and they don't do this again. And I told him, I don't want this to become a regular thing for every Trails game moving forward, but I would like to see this again. And as far as I heard, one of the future ones, they did say that they are going to do again. I think Kai, I don't know, but
the POV switching really kept things fresh.
Absolutely.
it definitely helps with when I hear anyone talk about pacing in Trails. Obviously, they usually have negative feelings towards it, especially as you're going through it and you hit those slow portions. But if there's one thing that Reverie can be praised for, is that because of the fact that when you're in one of those areas and you're feeling that way, you do have the ability to just switch over to either a different route where it's a little more faster, so something's happening that engages you more, or you could just go into the Reverie corridor and start fucking around with all of the mini games inside there, baby. Mini games galore. And that's one thing that I like about Trails in comparison to a lot of JRPGs. I feel like a lot of JRPGs, especially like PS1 Final Fantasies, the mini games are, a lot of them are misses. There's not even like hit or miss. A lot of them are misses. And I felt like Reverie, outside of the Panzer Soldat minigame, because I felt like there wasn't enough content in there for me to like really get to like it. Because I remember the first time I played, I was like, I'm not really feeling this. And then by the time I finished with all of the missions, and I was like, this is pretty decent, but it was over, so I didn't really get to really dive in there. So I'll say that one is closer to a miss than it is a hit. But all the rest of them, Vantage Masters, all
they brought Blade back for this one too, right?
No, I don't think Blade is in here. You're thinking of Pom Pom Party. That was the one that got
No, I know Pom Pom Party's back, and Elisa Magical Girl, which I can't remember if that was in a previous Trails game or if it was just Tokyo Xanadu. Tokyo Xanadu had a magical Elisa minigame, but it was a different one.
Yeah, it was a different one.
I've never played that game. Does it have a magical Elisa game?
Elisa is in the game.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
magical.
As an arcade cabinet.
Yeah, cool. She's Magical Girl Elisa. That whole lore is in Tokyo Xanadu. It's like they're in lore.
Tokyo Xanadu is so fucking weird. Because we got Toa is in Tokyo Xanadu as like a prominent character, but she's a different Toa.
Yeah, you need to play.
Gotcha.
You should play. If I give Tokyo Xanadu a lot of slander, but the only reason I give it a lot of slander is in the gameplay department. Honestly, everything else around Tokyo Xanadu is pretty good and worth experiencing, especially if you're a fan of Falcom related stuff. So I'll say that you can definitely get some enjoyment out of Tokyo Xanadu in that regards. Minigame wise, a lot of them were so much fun to play, and I felt like it definitely helps with if you're experiencing any bogged down in regards to pacing. If you're at a point in the story where you're like, okay, go over here and talk to this guy, go over here and talk to that guy, regardless of how engaged you are with Trails like lore, like, speaking from like someone myself who like, I'm the type of person that will talk to every single motherfucker that you can talk to before I move on.
Too.
Even I can admit that sometimes you can get a bit bogged down and you want to either take a breather and do something else. And usually taking a breather and doing something else in the previous Trails games, you're in that moment and you have to like, especially like, let's say for example in Cold Steel 3, when you remember before Ash did his crazy part
Oh, God.
and goes off and
Mhm.
shoot. You remember
Mhm.
before that they had you talk to like basically everyone in that little ceremony. It was
Yeah.
a lot of motherfuckers they wanted you to sit down and talk to
that was
before
in
it
that
happened.
castle, right?
Yeah, it was in
Yes.
that castle. It was a
There
lot
were
of people, and
There
it
were
was
so
mandatory.
many. There were so many
was
prompts
so
and
many.
dialogue trees on that one screen that's like the one big area of the game where the frame rate kind of took a hit, and it's
Yeah.
just because there's dialogue to load.
And Cold Steel
That's
4.
hilarious.
I feel like the moment in Cold Steel 4 when you're on the ship and all of those prompts are there,
Yeah,
it was a bit more enjoyable only because of the fact that it was a lot of characters that you've never seen talk to each other. But in
Yeah,
Cold Steel
for
3, it
sure.
was more so new Class 7 and Cold Steel 1 characters there. So it's like
Yeah.
it felt a little more enjoyable there because it was way more fan service going on there. But that doesn't change the fact that the quantity that was there and the amount of reading that you have to do, and it's mandatory.
It's like 2 hours, man.
It can really, regardless of how engaged you are, it can really exhaust you.
Mhm.
And it's mandatory. You have to get through this if you want to continue. There's nothing else that you can do outside of talking to these people, right?
I will say with Reverie, even like without the true Reverie corridor and all that extra stuff to explore on the side, it still has some of the best pacing of the series.
Yeah,
There's like
no, I agree.
there's like maybe 2 points where things feel a little slow for me. That was one
Yeah,
point,
talking
and
to
I think
people in
in
the crossbow part. Yeah,
Crossbell at the beginning, and then there was a point. I think it was around mains or something like that. That things just kind of
yeah, I
slowed down
remember
a
that
bit.
part. Yeah, I remember
But
that part.
that was
I think there
probably
was
it.
there was a part somewhere in Rean's that was the case too, but it definitely didn't happen in C's route. But there was a part in Rean's as well where that can happen. And all I'm saying is that at any point, well, not at any point, but majority of the points in the game, you could just hit left on the D-pad, pull up that route thing, and choose something else that you want to do. You had the freedom to do that, and it really did alleviate that exhaustion that you had. And that is a very strong pro that Reverie has over all of the Trails games that came before it.
Since we brought up C's route, it's probably worth taking a minute to talk about the new characters in C's route.
Yes.
Swin and Nadia
Yes.
and the backstory.
Rean.
Yeah,
So-
I have a feeling there's going to be a level of agreement across the board on this one. Swin and Nadia as characters, like yay or nay?
I'm big yay. Big yay.
I will say, if you read 3 and 9,
No, hang on,
They're-
that's next. Just yay or
okay.
nay.
Just yay or
As
nay
they
overall,
are.
or J as they are. Ooh, as they are, I can see a debate for both sides. For me, it's a yay.
Yeah, I still think that they're good characters.
Yeah.
Shadow probably agrees. Swin and Nadia good characters.
Yeah, I'd say overall they're good characters. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Now the handling of the backstory, that's probably I think where we're all gonna completely agree.
Yeah, this was not my favorite way to ever introduce characters. Do not have me do extra homework by having to go into a novel storybook essay format and having to read their backstories.
Yeah.
I don't mind their characters. Their characters aren't that bad. And when they had their moment to shine in the game with their personal antagonist, kind of took away from me because I did not read 3 and 9. Because I do not believe you should have to ever go and read something else outside of the material of a game.
I did read it, but like I kind of hated that because I have certain times a day set aside for reading a book. I don't own the physical copy of the book, so I had to read it in game, and that eats into my video game time. So like when I sit down and play a game, and with this in particular, I said, okay, I'll read a chapter of this book at the start of every play session. But it's so not ideal to me.
Yeah, no.
And like if you don't read that book, Twin and Nadia's nemesis, the guy with like the gravity power, whatever the fuck it is, the Emperor there,
Yeah, the Emperor. Yeah.
he makes little to no sense without
pretty
reading
much.
that book.
I had to pretty much just swallow that and just say, okay, yeah, I guess this is the whole thing going on with it, and I gotta read 3 and 9. But I don't like. Okay, I like their characters, but I feel like almost they're not needed, almost to a certain extent.
I feel like their
definitely-
connection
At this point, we have
Definitely
so many
Lapis
characters.
was the more important character.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
their connection
Lapis.
with Lapis
We
was
need
the-
Lapis. Like I
Yeah.
feel like you could have replaced I don't want to say anybody would should have nominated, but I feel like that would have been a better opportunity to put Kevin and what's her name in the story, back in the story. But
Rias?
yeah, Rias. Yeah, I feel like those two would have been fine. You got so many characters in this series that you're all putting together. We got like what 50 something characters in this game.
51 playable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say, I do like the combat mechanics that were introduced.
Yes.
The adding like the critical hit markers on characters and battles was really fun. So I liked the character inclusions for that. I just, it is just that reading the story thing that's the problem. You get the gist of who their nemesis is when he shows up. Like you kind of get the idea, but like it doesn't hit as hard as it should without reading that book.
I almost would have took like an hour long cutscene or maybe 2 hour long cutscene to explain that book. I don't feel that you should ever have to go to material like that to understand characters.
I feel like there was a few cutscenes that showed backstories for these characters, but I might be confusing it with the actual book because in my head there's a cutscene of these characters on a train doing some sort of assassin mission. Was that?
I think the thing is the thing with the book is that because you said you read it in game, right? Hold up.
I had
when you
to.
say hold up. When you say
From
you read
the
it
main
in game,
menu.
Okay. Yeah, because they have illustrations there. Because I know there are some people that read 3 and 9 when they were available to be collected in Cold Steel 4, which if you're reading it through there are no illustrations, right?
No.
But yeah, if you're reading it in the menus of Reverie, then you have the illustrations that came with the book that comes with the physical version. So you might, your memory might be pulling it from the illustrations.
Yeah, I probably am. Because in my head, like I can see their history, but I can't tell if I'm seeing it on a faded yellow page or like an actual cutscene anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, and I'm obviously not trying to be a Falcom apologist or anything, but I think when it comes to the level of type of story that the company like Falcom is handling, it's like, yeah, you from a presentation standpoint, which is another thing that you can definitely critique Falcom as a overall company about. You could step up your presentation, but then there's the whole debate about expenses and bogging down how long a release comes out, which we've seen that from other JRPG franchises. But the point is, their presentation, I agree with you guys. Going aside to read a little mini novel to come back.
Okay, that mini novel is like 100 pages though.
Oh hell no!
Yeah, it's regardless if that because this isn't obviously the first time they had short novels in Trails. They've been doing this since first chapter, right? So this isn't something that's new. They've been doing this, but just because they've been doing this whole time doesn't mean it's something that you either should continue, or if you could find an alternative way to give it to the player that's more easily digestible, right?
Here's the thing, like the novel is very detailed and I appreciate that it's there and it's included, but there's only a small amount of it that's actually needed for the main plot. And I think 2 minutes of exposition could have filled us in on what we needed instead of hiding it exclusively in that novel.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's a clever way of storytelling at all. That's just tedium, if you ask me.
I think if you're someone, there's a lot of stuff to get from those novels and reading them all in the game, but like, there's very important things that shouldn't be just, gated off to those novels.
I think this is where we have to remember the type of entry that Reverie is, which is it's an epilogue entry like Trails in the Sky 3rd chapter. So with the knowledge that we currently have about Reverie, we don't know if the new lore that was introduced to us in 3 and 9 is going to be relevant in future Trails entries, because there is some new lore in there in regards to like a whole different society that the Emperor is from that seems similar to Ouroboros, but they're not Ouroboros, because I thought they were Ouroboros. And he was like, no, this is this is a group completely different. I'm like, what the fuck? You know? I think it depends on if we're going to see anything that has to do with that in future entries, which if I'm going to put my money on it, I don't think that they will, but I don't know what Falcom's, going to do, right? But that's Reverie. Reverie's an epilogue entry, and they're just like Trails in the Sky third chapter with the salt pail, and we don't know what it was during that time. I don't know what they're going to do with a decent amount of the lore that was introduced in 3 and 9, but Tarks is correct that the information that we need for this specific entry, it's really just the relationship that 3 and 9, or Swin and Nadia, had with the Emperor, which is that slave, mercenary type of toxic and messed up relationship that they had. And it was definitely something that you probably could have easily and more quickly and concisely explained in an alternative way.
Right.
But yeah, you can definitely consider that a critique if you're someone who isn't someone who reads, novel length stuff. But it's like, there's only so much like leeway you can give someone if they're playing Trails, because it's like, bro, you're playing Trails, you're going to be reading a lot, right? So it's like it's
yeah, I have some assistance while I'm reading. See, you're starting to sound like one of those
I'm trying to see both
right now.
No, hold up. I'm just trying to say there's an argument for both sides, and I already gave you your credit in regards to, yes, I understand it can definitely be seen as a critique, but this side is also has some relevance too. There's
My
both
question
sides.
is, do you personally feel it's a negative towards the game? I would.
I don't consider it. Once again, just like the whole like Crow coming back from the death. I'm more interested on how is the overall execution by the end of things. And when it comes to this, once again, I felt like the execution was there. It did hit when they finally got the Emperor out of their life, because that motherfucker is, once again, one of those characters where, Shadow, you're never going to read 3 and 9, right?
Nope.
Okay. Well, spoilers for people who haven't read 3 and 9. You're
Unless it goes on an audiobook, that's the only time.
The Emperor legit dies in 3 and 9.
Yeah,
and he is a character. He's a character that... And you could say that this is a critique, because like people are like critiquing Cold Steel 4 about characters dying and coming back. There are 2 moments in Reverie where a character either got a fake out or died and came back, and the character that died and came back is the Emperor, where it's like, first you had an android version of him, which wasn't him, but then you also had you had the android version of him, and then you also had that you remember he had a one of those sacred items that apparently made him into this giant mutant zombie, and now he's back again.
These are like the Millennium pieces from fucking Yu-Gi-Oh.
At this point, he felt like a Resident Evil villain, where it's like, through supernatural means, this villain just won't die, just fucking die and leave us alone. But I also felt like
he started looking like Nemesis from Resident Evil.
Yeah, he started looking like Nemesis by the end. That's why I compared it, because it's like, 1, he isn't fucking dying, and 2, you literally look like a Resident Evil boss right now.
Also, I just want to add, like, to him, like, I don't care too much about the Emperor as a character, but like the gravity power thing, well, I thought was like really cool.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. The execution of that and what it meant for Swin and Nadia, because this is someone that has terrorized their past, how they put an end to him once and for all, even though they had to do it multiple times. I can't deny that it was still well executed when Swin and Nadia are both like holding his combined sword and stabbing it into it, ending it. It was very good. I liked all of that. But I can definitely see if someone wanted to critique the fact that this guy just coming back and all of this stuff, I could see someone critiquing that as well. But once again, I felt like that was handled well if you know the backstory of 3 and 9, and that's if you read the book. So it's like there's a lot of moving pieces there.
But we're talking
Yeah,
about like putting like major characters in a book and then putting them into a game. Do you
And it's
agree?
it's not even just a book. It's that this major character is like only in bits and pieces of that book, and you really have to sift through a lot of reading to get the important details.
Yeah,
For this game. So I do think, and I think Riku already agreed that it would have been ideal to just have 2 minutes of exposition somewhere early on that kind of gave this backstory in game without sifting through chapters and chapters and chapters.
Like I said, once again, it all depends on if they're going to use the lore that wasn't used in Reverie in future Trails entries.
I mean, if they use the lore in future entries, they're just going to give us exposition for it again anyway.
Exactly.
I
Yeah, I'm
think-
just gonna set it up again. Yeah.
Which is what I'm saying they didn't give us in regards to the Emperor in game outside of that book.
Yeah,
I think the ideal thing they should have done. You guys remember how the first Daydream we all had to experience was the Swin Nadia Risha one? I think what they should have done is rather than do the Swin Nadia Risha Daydream, they should have just made that Daydream to explain the concept what we read in 3 and 9.
Oh,
or like you experience
that would have definitely been a better way
through that Daydream, and everybody has to experience it.
But only if it's like a mandatory daydream, because most of the daydreams are not.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Wait, there's
That's
only
the only
one
one.
daydream that is, right?
Yeah, and that was the
Okay.
Swin Nadia Risha one. Like
Yeah,
if they would have
no,
just
I-
switched that for the 3 and 9, I think that would have been like the ideal scenario.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Recon, you are completely. Yeah, that is genius. That would have that answers your question right there, Shadow. If when I said that they could have found a better alternative way, that would have been it right there. Because you already have daydreams in there, right? Daydreams are literally meant for like side story and stuff. The developers want you to see, but they're putting it in these daydreams. I agree with Recon. That would have been the best way to handle the 3 and 9 backstory was through
and
a first mandatory daydream, especially since it's happening at the very beginning of the game. You don't know shit about Swin and Nadia anyway, so it's like it's definitely filling in a lot of things before
the Swin, Nadia, and Risha daydream gets referenced once, as in like, oh, it's you two we met once before. But
Yeah, inside the Reverie
that's literally
talk to them.
that's literally where the relevance for that story ends.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
it could have I really should have been replaced with your suggestion.
yeah, no, yeah, I completely agree with that. That would have been the better way to go about it.
The way that I looked at all three of them and Rufus's party, Loppy's, well, her kind of less because there was a lot of focus on Lapis in this one, but specifically Swin and Nadia. I feel like I looked at them sort of similarly to how I looked at not Ren. I'd probably go Altina in Cold Steel 2 and Kia in Trails from Zero. Where for me, Swin and Nadia, when I first went through the game, it felt like a clear this is only the beginning of what we're getting with these characters. And they're mainly here to emphasize Rufus's change as a person. So like even without 3 and 9, I feel like they achieve that purpose, especially once you reach Act 4 and Rufus reflects on his brief journey and looks at the three characters and it's like, okay, this is why these particular characters were brought back and why their interactions work so well, specifically with Rufus. I feel like that was their main, even for individuals who didn't read 3 and 9, I think that's the main takeaway, that Falcom wanted the player to get away from those two characters, even if they didn't really see them as great or even good characters. I think the purpose that they served within the sea route to propel Rufus into prominence is, I think, what Falcom wanted out of the introduction to these two characters. Even though it definitely could have been done better from 3 and 9 standpoint, for sure.
By the time we wrapped on Reverie, like Rufus, in previous games, wasn't that big of a deal to me. But like his redemption arc here probably put him like on the level of some of the other series like biggest characters. Like,
Sure.
I came out caring for Rufus a lot more than I went in caring for him.
Same here.
All right,
And
so with you saying that, I alluded to the fact that there was another pairing of characters where I felt, let's use, it was in Sky where a character was done, they had their character arc, but then you see another character in a later arc, and it's extremely similar, and it's handled in a way that's different, and you can make a debate that it was handled better. Those other two pairings was Rufus and Richard. And Alan Richard in Cold Steel in Trails in the Sky first and second chapter, he's a character who's heavily associated with the imperial government and all of that stuff. He's doing some schemes behind the scenes, and you fight him, and he has a redemption arc. And for the most part, there's a decent amount of people that like Alan Richard, but we never saw him after fucking Trails in the Sky third chapter. Well, I mean, we may have saw him like 1 or 2, but you can definitely, there is definitely a debate to be had that Rufus is Alan Richard 2.0, where a lot of the stuff that Rufus goes through from Cold Steel 1 all the way to Reverie, it's very similar to what Alan Richard did, outside of the fact that they both are blonde swordsmen. And his redemption arc is stronger than what we had with Alan Richard, because of the fact that, similar to the Crow and Louvet thing, like I said, we never got to actually use Louvet as a playable character or spend time with him, so we didn't have that investment or connection to Louvet, which is why it's really hit for me like that.
Setting the playable aspect aside, the Rufus arc kind of works out, I feel like, so strongly because he's put into a position where he has to care for and like protect essentially children, a child in this point.
Yeah.
And I feel like as you see him develop his relationship with Lapis especially, he becomes a lot more sympathetic as a character. And then you got your cheese boys, Rean and Lloyd, just there to like say all the sweet cheesy things to him. It just
because
when it ends, man, you just feel warm.
Because remember, at the very
beginning,
at the beginning of Rufus's arc, at the beginning of this game, you see that he's still accepting the fact that he's a messed up person, and he's still willing to do messed up things to get to the end of whatever solution he's trying to get to the end to, right? And he didn't necessarily, move that character trait out of him. He probably still has a bit of that even by the end of this, right? But like you said, we do see him have more compassion for other people that he follows throughout his journey, arguably stronger than the relationship he had with the Ironbloods, right? So it's like,
for sure,
the character development for Rufus, I completely agree with you. It is one of the strongest character developments and redemption arcs in the franchise thus far. And I wasn't sure. There was one thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about the android probe a bit more.
Reverie does give us like a false sense of, I don't want to say a false sense of security, but it's what I'm going to use. When we're first introduced to what we think is Rufus at the start of the game.
Yeah.
When he shows up to cut Crossbell again.
Yeah, that's what I was about to go into. Yeah,
it works. It works. I want to say like the effect is twice as strong because you have this impression of, oh, big bad Rufus, and then it's like, oh shit, this other guy is actually Rufus.
Trying to be Gilead Osborne 2.0.
Yeah, but then we get like, oh, this other guy's actually Rufus, and like this is how he is now, and it's I don't know. You start out at this like subterranean level with your opinion of him, and like when you meet the real version of him, it's like, oh shit, this is actually like we just jumped up 6 levels instead of like 1 or 2 or 3, right?
100%. And before Riku goes into the android point, I wanted to touch upon what you said earlier in regards to how he spent so much time with the Ironbloods, and yet these individuals he's been with for a brief amount of time. connect with him on a much more personal level. And I think the game showcases that visually, right? You have masked Rufus at the beginning, who represents the individual who was striving for perfection, Cold Steel 1 until now. He never let down his guard. He always kept up a mask of who he was and who we knew him to be, which was represented through the android Rufus as like this embodiment of perfection, the one who would never lose and stuff of that nature. And then when he takes off the mask literally only with Lapis, Swin, and Nadia, these are the only individuals who actually force him to come out of his shell. As Lapis, I think that's why that parallel works so well, because Lapis obviously is made in the Rosenberg studio, which is known for their perfection, known for creating these dolls that are perfect in every way, shape, or form, similar to that's kind of what Rufus is, right? So when he sees himself within this individual who's not even human, and they have the conversation about what it means to be that, which is why he calls back to that exact same conversation when he fights the android version of himself, and ultimately comes to the conclusion that no, it's not perfection he should strive for, but instead to be his real self. That's where I think the game excels with the android and real plotline, and how they have to literally face their pasts in front of them. But I just wanted to say that before you hopped into the android stuff.
Oh yeah,
I
you
think
definitely
it's so
said.
cool.
Yeah, you definitely said a nice chunk of what I was about to get into, because it's like I wasn't when I found out that, and this is actually a part that I don't see a lot of people critiquing Trails into Reverie for. But once again, usually when this series, I find any sort of feeling of deflation, I always ask myself, okay, what are you gonna do with what you just did? And most of the time, they, they win me back with it. One of the examples was when I first figured out that this plot had to do with these perfect replication replication androids, and that happened when we were with Rean, and you're going to the top of the tower in the Nords, and you are faced against Adios McLean. And this is the first time we're seeing Adios McLean in the story, outside of the very beginning when he did Twin Arcane Gale. But the point is, we're seeing him and we're fighting him, and oh my god, I was fucking hype. You see
Yeah, me
him,
too.
you're fighting him, you know how strong he is. He's only gotten stronger since Azure, and he's apparently one of the strongest characters here in Erebonia right now. He's fighting Rean, Gaius, Aurelia Le Guin. He's fighting some powerhouses here right now. And as far as we know, this fight that they happened only happened. The span of how fast the fight happened was probably just like a little skirmish, but that doesn't change the fact that when you're fighting him and he does second form Gale Raging Tempest, it's hype, right? But then you get to the end of that fight, and it's like, oh, he was an android. And you're like, for me, I felt a sense of deflation. I was like, what do you mean? That whole time I had my fucking powerful ass squad, and we were fucking. I remember I'm also playing on Abyss mode, so this is really fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Really
I'm
hard.
like, it's like this is some really intense shit, and you're telling me that whole time I was fighting a fucking fake android. I felt a sense of deflation during that time, right? And for a couple of hours, I wasn't sold on the android trope because of that deflation. I was like, okay, who else is an android? What are they doing with this, right? So when I saw the Rufus and the android Rufus being a plot that was happening, that sense of deflation was happening once again, because I thought that what I was predicting this story to go down a path. I thought that the plot that Cold Steel 4 was setting up, showing us the bad ending and all of that stuff. I thought what was going to happen was that the Rean from the bad ending was going to gain some ability from Ishmelga to jump into a different reality and take that over, like he took over his reality, and he's going to bring some of the people that he that was following him, which would be, I guess, that bad ending's Rufus, bring them into this reality. They're going to take over this reality as well. That's where I thought they were taking this. So when I saw two Rufuses, before I knew it was an android, I thought that's what was going on. I thought this was Rufus from an alternate reality here to fight the Rufus that we have here. And I thought that was the same thing with Ishmael Green and all that stuff. So when I found out that this was, no, it's not really them, it's androids, I was like, kind of deflation. But once again, in regards to the execution of what they had here and what Recon was saying, with the Rufus coming face to face with this android version of himself, that is supposed to be striving for perfection, and this android Rufus telling the real Rufus what the definition of Rufus is in front of his face. Like, if you really want to be the perfect Rufus, this is what you got to do. How do you not know this? Maybe we should sit down and think about who should be the Rufus moving forward. And he's schooling him about who he is. And Rufus is like, how you going to tell me who Rufus should be, right? Only Rufus can tell you who Rufus should be. And if Rufus is going to go down this path, and this is how it looks, then this is the true authentic Rufus. Only the real organic Rufus can tell you what the definition of what Rufus is going to be. Not some clone or android that has a dated version of what Rufus thought he was, and gets into the whole concept of perfection and the fact that if you do reach perfection, then there is a debate to be had that you just limited yourself because you can't grow or move any further than who you currently are right now because you're perfect, right? So it's like, are you even the superior version if you as a person are technically stagnant? You know, so it's like that Rufus. You see the end of that Rufus talking about the fact that, yeah, you should be the one that should move forward as that Rufus. And Rufus even came at him in a way that's not even in a, yeah, motherfucker, I should because I am. You know, he still came at him with like, you know, when he slashes him, he's like, farewell. He's still handling this in a way that's very mature and not arrogant, because that was an aspect of Rufus up to this point that he has held heavy to him once you see him reveal himself. Like when you saw him at the end of Cold Steel 3 against Eustace and the squad up to that point, he had a lot of vitriol in his soul. He had a lot of hatred, aggression, a jealousy towards Eustace, him being the son that is held up while he isn't. He had and this inferiority complex is something that he has been holding as a chip on his shoulder all the way up to, you know, when he gets with his Reverie squad, which is why I said, you know, him with the Iron Bloods, he wasn't really growing with them, right? He was stagnant with them, but he was growing with this new squad. So it's like, with all that being said, the C route is fucking peak.
Yes. Absolutely.
The C route is fucking peak, man. Shadow, C route. Your thoughts? Where do you rank the C route? Because I know some people are like, the Lloyd route, I don't really care for it. The C route is peak. Rean, there's a lot of Rean haters out there, so there's still a decent amount of people that are like, I don't really care for Rean. I'm just done with him. Forget Rean. It's the C route. Only the C route is the good route. I'm like, stop this. Each route has good things that have them going for them, right? And I don't feel like there's a weak route. There are routes that are stronger, but there is no weak route. There is definitely strong aspects in all of the routes that you can, you know, there's a heavy discussion to be had with all of the characters that went through all of the routes, right? But the question is, which one was your favorite?
No, I gotta go with the C route as well. Being my
Okay.
favorite. It probably could have had a bigger impact if I had read 3 and 9 for Nadia's and Swin's, I forgot his name, thing. But as far as Rufus's whole story arc, it was really good, executed really, really well. But I will say, I'm kind of Rufus. I don't even know how to say this without sounding weird.
I know what you're gonna say too.
I'm a Rufus simp. I'm gonna say here a lot of you. Like I really
love
do.
it.
And you're saying that it happened in this game, right? This
No,
wasn't the case before
actually,
this game, right?
There was some inklings. There was some inklings to be like actually liking Rufus, because one of the big things I liked about Rufus was his voice. I'm like, damn.
Oh,
If I was a
that voice
girl,
actor.
if I was a girl, holy shit! Would I? Like,
Yo, real
Us,
talk, bro.
us. But no, you are
I feel
correct.
him,
You are
bro.
correct.
I really
Out
feel
of the two voice actors and all of English voice acting for Trails, if there's two characters that really knocked it out of the park for having overwhelming charisma in their voice, it's the Rufus voice actor and it was the original Gilead Osborne voice actor.
Yeah, Gilead
Those
Osborne.
two-
The first
those
Osborne
two-
is so
both
good.
of them.
They
Both of them.
have
They are
so
both
much
good, yeah, but the
charisma
first
behind
one-
their voice. Yes, they are.
I mean-
They knock it out of the park.
With the first Osborne, man, like that guy opens his mouth and you feel
Oh,
power.
for sure.
Feel the grandiose of
Like, it's
everything he
insane.
says. You know, and
Yeah,
you
So
here's the thing. Think about this. With Rufus treating Gilead Osborne like his father figure this entire time, it works fucking out. Both of them
Yeah,
having
it
this
does.
like grandiose and charisma behind it. You could debate
Yeah.
that Rufus got that directly from Gilead Osborne. You know, you can't deny that. That's definitely a safe assumption that that's exactly who we got it from. You know, and both
You know,
voice
this-
actors knocked it out of the park for it.
I think this is the first time I've ever been asked to consider Rufus as a panty dropper. The thoughts never
Yo,
occurred to me.
yo, I said
That's
this.
what
I was
he
like,
is.
yo, wait
That's what
until
he
Lady
is.
Pelvic gets to this fucking entry, bro. She's going to be a Rufus fucking simp. Even before he gets through his redemption arc, when he's going, because you know she likes her bad boys and whatnot. She's over here, she's playing Trails in the Sky and whatnot, and she's loving Lecter that gets introduced in third chapter. Like, if you like Lecter, I don't know what the fuck Rufus is gonna do to you, because goddamn, Rufus is a top tier character.
him.
So I
yeah,
can't
he really
deny.
is. Especially after this game. Yeah, definitely he's way.
And
up there.
and the way his story ends, because that was one thing that I was irked by as well in regards to, like, can't deny this is another fake out, right? You get to the end of his arc and he's going to sacrifice himself for everyone, right? It was set up very nicely. This fucking satellite laser from the sky is gonna hit a specific location of wherever the hatred is, and Rufus is like, okay, I'm gonna pull in all that aggro. Everyone hate me. It's all me. I did it, everything, right? So everyone that sees him, like, directs all of that hate towards him, and the laser's about to drop down. I thought all of that setup to that part was fucking genius, and I was like, bro, if this is the way that Rufus goes out, I'm fine with it, right? But he didn't, right? They reverse time. They go in there. And when they did the reverse time, I was like, oh god, here comes the deflation, right? But once again, I was like, okay, what are they gonna do with this, right? If you're gonna do this trope once again, where I thought a character was gonna die, but now they're not gonna die, what are you going to sell me on that is going to be worth the fact that they're still here, right?
They
guys
sell you on a speech from Lloyd.
Yes, sir.
and,
Talk no
and that
jutsu.
and that
Naruto
speech
style.
was good. I was like, you know what?
I was phenomenal.
I'll take
dude.
it.
I love
I'll
that
take
moment.
it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Even though I do feel like if Rufus died there, it would have been a very good ending to his character. But what happened after that, when he's like sitting in the hospital and they're talking about Rufus, you really can't stay in Erebon. You got to get respectfully, you got to get the fuck up out of here, right? And them alluding, well, not even alluding. They said that he left Erebon, so he's out there. I'm not gonna say anything about future entries if you're trying to stay blind to those. Even though this is Spoilercast, I'm not going to talk about entries that are ahead of it. We can talk about entries behind, but not ahead. But they're alluding to the fact that they want to do something with Rufus in the future that isn't connected to Erebonia itself, right? So I don't know what Falcom is gonna do with them, but from the history of what they've done with characters that I thought when they died, but they came back and they did something that I loved, I personally have trust in whatever they are planning to do with Rufus. They've earned my personal trust.
In Rufus's case, leading on from what you're saying, in Rufus's case, I've always looked at it as even without any of that stuff, any of like the thematic brilliance that takes place at the end of the game, in regards to his character, the connection with Lloyd and stuff of that nature. Somebody like him, like what Lloyd basically tries to say at the end is, death would be too easy a punishment to deal with all the consequences of his actions. Like
Mhm.
I feel like from that point forward, he really needs to, even more so than he does throughout this game, is just try to live the rest of his life, uh, trying to get over slash deal with what he lived with,
Yeah,
and what he did
And
it's
with you saying
basically
that,
like
in his life.
and with you saying that, there's definitely this this reoccurring theme that trails, at least as far as I'm seeing, since Cold Steel 1, as I'm not going to say they're beating you over the head with it, but they are. You can see this similar theme playing throughout characters' lives, whether it's Crow, Rean, Rufus, all of these characters where there were certain points in their character arc where they either died or was supposed to die, or they got brought back and they're still here and they're still moving forward. And like you said, maybe death was quote unquote not either not the way for them to go out, or they still have more they need to do, or Falcom just has more plans for this character. And even though
And more
the
merchandise to
point,
sell.
even
But go ahead.
yeah, I know, right? But the points where all three of these characters could have died at, whether it was Rufus at the end of Reverie, Rean in the bad ending of Cold Steel 4, or Crow at the end of Cold Steel 2. All three of these would have been great moments for these characters to, you know, end their character arc, and we all would have been happy with how the character was written up to their conclusion, right? But the fact that these characters did continue, and if you critique what was done with them past that point, all of them were handled in a way where if someone sat there and said, okay, I can forgive, you have earned the I guess respect from a writing standpoint and a characterization standpoint for them to still be here and what you did with them, you know. And you see that in Rean, Crow, and Rufus, you know. And that's one thing you see in Rufus in this game, and you saw it in the previous games, and that's something that the Cold Steel arc overall, it looks like that they have been, it's a theme that they've been following. And other characters that weren't a part of your playable squad, or characters that we weren't heavily invested in because they weren't in your main squad or you weren't following them, it seems like Falcom was like, okay, in regards to the characters that we're going to kill off and they stayed in, we're going to allocate those to those characters, whether that was V, Gileath Osborne, Adion Hod, because all of these characters, well, not V, but Adion Hod and Gileath Osborne were both characters that you can debate did die in a sacrificial way and left something for the characters that are still here to benefit from, right? You know, with Adion Hod giving Valimar back his voice and more power, you know, and Gileath Osborne and everything that he sacrificed in his life to hold back Ishmelga. And that's one part I did like about Cold Steel 4 was the fact that
did we
Gileath
just
Osborne
go back
did
like an hour and
I
a
know,
half
right?
in time?
I don't know.
I feel like we're back on what we were talking about like almost 2 hours ago.
Yeah, we definitely we're going to
The themes. I'm gonna just wrap it up to the themes. The themes are good for, and you can see it throughout Cold Steel 1 all the way to Reverie. The themes are there, and it's good.
With you bringing up Osborne and everything that he went through, of course that was showcased through a daydream in this game. Did you guys have a particular daydream that stood out to you within Reverie? Because I know for me it was that one for sure.
I had one
finding
that
out the
stood
truth
out,
about Osborne.
I had one that stood out in a not good way. Just one that I didn't care for.
I think I know which one you're going to talk about.
There's a character, I can't remember his name. I feel like
guy, right?
He has crazy fucking eyeballs and I think green hair. And for some reason in my mind he eats bugs, but I don't remember if that's a thing.
No, I think
he
that's
does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cold Steel 3 What's his name?
The
Justin?
the one with the fork.
Freddie. His name is
Yeah,
Freddie.
Freddy. Yeah.
Freddy with the fork
His
spear, right?
daydream did not give a shit. I think one of my favorites was dressing up Kurt as a girl
Oh,
for
God.
so
State
good.
of Stria's Academy.
Yep.
I know that was a callback to the Joshua thing.
Yeah.
It
I'm not
was,
sure.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of that trope. I'm not saying that it was handled badly or that it was bad. Just wasn't a fan of it. But I
No,
could see how
I appreciated the levity of that story.
it was funny. I'll give it
In
that.
a way that I didn't appreciate the levity of the other guy who I never once cared about.
Yeah. Daydream for me, man, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I have to, because obviously when it comes to like third chapter, you'll be a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's either fucking the Olivier and Gilly Osborne one or it's Star Door 15 because I'm fucked up, baby. But
No,
when it comes to this one,
Ren's door though, and I know that's off topic. It's probably like the peak emotional core of the entire series.
oh no, I
No
completely.
question.
Hey,
No
tell that to
question.
Lady Pelt.
So even if you're a little fucked up, I think you have there's
Oh,
good
yeah,
cause
there's
for it here.
Oh, yeah, no,
that,
no,
that
I
is
would
one
even
of
say that's my
Falcom's peaks.
favorite. Anything with
That's one of their
Tia's
peaks.
mother is my favorite Star
Oh,
Door.
Erica.
Yeah.
Erica's
Yeah.
the best, yo.
Yeah,
Erica's
yeah, no.
the best.
Ugh. I feel like one that I really liked was it was actually the DLC one with the introduction of Shizuna.
Ooh, that's a great pick.
What
I
It's
love that
it's a good pick, but once I wish it got, because here's the thing, I got spoiled a bit about what occurs in that Star Door. All I heard before I watched it
Star
or
Door,
even
you
knew
say?
that it was thing. What happened?
You said you called it a star door?
Sorry, I know I'm still used to calling it Star Door.
Daydream.
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 Before I watched that Daydream, I got spoiled on one of the like peak climactic moments in that Daydream, and that was the part
Mm.
I heard someone say that Rean fights Shizuna for a little while, and his sword is broken in the fight, and I was like, "Fuck, that happened! Someone did that to Rean's sword. What the fuck? Shizuna, I'm here for it. I'm ready. Let's go!" Right? And I get in there, and the DLC, the DLC Daydreams aren't handled the same way as the regular Daydreams, to which and where
For sure.
these are full.
No.
These are full blown visual novels.
It's literally a
Oh,
visual
absolutely.
novel with
These
three
are
routes,
full
right?
blown visual novels,
Yeah.
black and white. And when I saw what I was getting into, I was like, that deteriorating feeling, happened again. But I was like, all right, well, regardless, let me see what this is about, right? And I loved it all. I loved it all. I can't wait to see what Shizuna is about in the next games. Yeah, I'll have to give it to that one, even with the fact that it was
Great
in a
choice.
black and white visual novel format.
Great choice, because I love those last three a lot, and I went through them quite a few times.
Yeah.
The two that stick out to me the most are Ash's Door, because it concludes his
Oh
character
yeah,
arc.
man. Yeah.
That one was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was really
and
good for
one
his
of my
character.
favorite parts, like I said earlier, is a Cold Steel 3 tard. That felt like the end of Cold Steel 3, like the actual true ending to that game. Was Ash's Door, and the Gileath Osborne door, where we find out the truth about his story, and the connection to Rean, that final shot. That's just like Ren's door. That's one of the emotional peaks for me in the series. It's absolutely brilliant, and skyrocketed Osborne up my favorite characters list. What a brilliant character.
Osborne is a very good antagonist. He's a very good and that's the reason I call him, obviously a difference between antagonist and villain, right? He is through and through an antagonist that we think is the villain, which is it's not like we haven't seen it before, right? A lot of JRPGs and anime have done it before, but once again, it's not about who did it first, it's about did you do it well or great. And for Gileath Osborne, this is definitely a very strong and good example of it being executed great.
Yeah, it's because they make him sympathetic, right?
Right.
Yeah, because like all the way up to that point, we don't really know the real Gileath Osborne, right? You know?
We know Dreikel's, but we don't know
Yeah.
Gileath Osborne.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was a very good Daydream as well. I'm looking at some of the notes here that Shadow has. He says a lot of playable characters. How do you guys feel about the fact that this game has 51 playable
Oh
characters
my
for you to
gosh.
choose from? Because it's like
Uh,
with a long format story like this and the roster and whatnot, it was inevitable that this was going to happen, right? And I see both sides. Some people saying that I love it all. I'm here for the big cast. I love it. Big rosters. I'm here for it. I love it, right? And I'm one of those people. I love Warriors of Orochi. I love One Piece. I like anything that has a
mhm.
big cast.
Same here.
But then there are other people on the other side of the spectrum that are like, I don't give a fuck how well they're written. This is bloated, and I'm not here for it. And these are the same people that'll praise Trails from Zero for having only 4 playable characters that you follow, and this is the peak right here. Keep it at 4, keep it small, keep it nice and tight, and good to go. And fuck anything that's over that limit, right? So where do you guys fall on that spectrum in regards to quantity of characters? Because this is
So,
the biggest one that's yet.
like quantity wise, obviously there's nothing you can do meaningful with all of those characters. Like you can't give them all important or considerable amount of focus in the story or new character arcs, but like most of them have already had their character arcs and they're just there to fill their role in like the ongoing events, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Like I don't. There's probably characters I never put into my combat party, but they're there for the people who want to use them, and I
yeah.
really
And I
don't
use
see a
them all.
problem with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a have your cake and eat it too type of situation. If you don't want to use them, you don't, right? But if you do want to use them, they're there, right?
Yeah.
So like obviously there's people that you won't catch them ever using a playable character like Elise, right?
Now I at least
But
looked through them all for their support.
Right.
The hell was it called? The
Brave Order,
Brave Orders. Yes, I
Yeah.
looked through them all for that, but like,
yeah,
there's no way they were all going to end up in my battle party. And still, that there's not a single problem with that. So I don't ever get why people have a problem with the large playable cast.
yeah. I will say even though we have a over 51 playable characters, and this might be like, oh come on, really Riku more? There are still other characters they probably could have added to the playable
Oh, absolutely.
overall
Yeah.
cast as well, and some of those that stood out to me, and I was actually surprised by this one. Thomas Lysander, when you're in the Reverie corridor and you reach one of the like the vibe check boss battles in the Reverie corridor, you're actually fighting a Reverie version of Thomas Lysander in front of you, and he already has his models. He's had it since beginning of Cold Steel 1, but this is the first time we actually get to see him in gameplay. He's doing things. He has an S craft. He has crafts. All of this stuff, and he's there. So it's like, why isn't this? Why didn't you give me the ability to use him when he's basically built and ready to go right there? So it's like, obviously extreme nitpick, but it's just like, man, I would have loved to use Thomas Lysander as well.
They let us play as McBurn, so like,
Yeah,
I'm
Oof.
pretty
Shit.
happy.
I am. Yeah, once he got into my, he's like
such a great addition.
he's like me with Crow. When I got Crow in Cold Steel 4, I was like, all right, Crow's never leaving my party, and he never did.
Right.
For the end of Cold Steel 4, all the way to the end of Cold Steel 4. Anytime I had the chance to use Crow, he was right beside Rean through the entire time. Same thing with McBurn here. Anytime I went into the Reverie corridor, my characters I was always bringing was Rean, Crow, and McBurn. Everyone else I swapped around and I used the entire squad, but those were the 3 characters I always brought with me.
I love
The
it.
lovers who fight together die together.
That's right, baby.
and speaking on that, the amount of victory lines that we get in this game.
So many.
Oh my gosh, it
just makes you want to try different
so good.
Yes,
I was sitting there, especially since they give you a gameplay incentive post game to see the newer ones, because up to this point it was just two characters that have a little funny or cathartic, nostalgic conversation together. But post game is like, okay, now you have to bring more than two characters, and these characters are going to have special dialogue together, and it got into this that feeling that you get in the Tales of games of like, man, this is so good. I'm seeing all of these characters interact with each other in this victory scene. But in this game, for me, it felt even stronger than the Tales of games that I've played thus far, because of the fact that they are pulling from all of these games that I've played up to this point. It was so they hit harder for me, because when it was in the Tales of games, they were fun, but it was only secluded to that one specific entry and only that entry. But it's like when you see Joshua and Estelle talking to like the scene where there was one where it was like Estelle, Agate, it was Estelle, Randy, Gaius, and Ash. And and I was like, why do you want me to bring these for? What do they have in common, right? And then you get in there and it's like, and this one isn't even a callback to anything, but it's like, oh yeah, they all have pole arms. And then the whole cutscene is just about, okay, who's best with the pole arm? And then fucking Estelle, Randy, and Gaius pull out their pole arms ready to fight, and Ash is like, what are you guys doing? So it's like, even when it's not connected to like all of the stuff from that you can pull from, even those still hit. So it's like, they were good, man. I liked, and you can only do that with like a very big and nice roster that's nice and fleshed out at this point. It was once again a celebration.
When I finished Cold Steel 4, I did that final true ending sequence like 20 times, where you get to play as Rean, or you get to choose to play as Rean, Estelle, and Lloyd, just because it's the MC gang. I did that so many times. Reverie was that, but giving it an entire dungeon. So throughout most of my playthrough, until I unlocked Vita and McBurn and Victor down the line, I was, every time I entered the corridor when I could, and all these characters were unlocked, I always went Rean, Estelle, Lloyd, Rean, Estelle, Lloyd, because those are my MCs, you know what I mean? And like, I have to put them side by side, interacting with each other, because that's one of the things that makes Trails so special to me, is when all these different MCs and protagonists come together and fight against the common enemy. So I kept putting them together. That was a lot of the squad.
Yeah, I will give this a critique. I feel like this is a legit critique that I personally have. This is more so on the gameplay side, because it's like, okay, I understand that Trails is first and foremost story, characterization, all of that stuff, and gameplay comes second. But it's not like they aren't trying to keep the gameplay fresh and as balanced as they can with how broken it still is, right? But it's more so for me, there's certain characters that I felt they probably could have gotten a bit more when it came to their moveset.
But yeah, there's some characters that only have like two arts or two crafts.
Two crafts. Yeah, so like Joshua and Estelle, they only have like 2 or 3 crafts each, and it's like, for me, it was like, I want to. Now I'm thinking just from a gameplay standpoint, and I'm like, I got to bring a really strong squad right now. That's when it's like, okay, should I bring Joshua? Should I bring Estelle? There are other characters that have more crafts, and sometimes 2 S crafts, that I could bring over Joshua and Estelle, because just from a gameplay standpoint, these characters are more useful to me than these characters, right? And I just felt like, oh man, I wanted to use Estelle and Joshua more, but it's like, they don't have a lot of the crafts that I know them to have. Like, I have Phantom Raid, but can I have, like, could you bring back Sever, Joshua's first S craft? Right?
With Falcom, with them still being so small, like, the only way I think they possibly could have brought this many characters in was to, like, copy and paste what was already made for them.
Right.
Yeah.
If they had to do more work on, like, building them out for combat, we wouldn't have seen them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as well, because that's probably that's probably the biggest reason why we didn't see combo crafts from the crossbow games return, because when they were getting into Cold Steel and you're starting off with 8 characters, do you know how many combo crafts you can just make off of those combinations? That's overwhelming right there. So even though I was very disappointed when I saw that combo crafts were only in Trails in the crossbow games, it worked out for them because they were a smaller squad. So if you're someone that wanted a bigger squad, and you're like, man, I want more than just these 4. At least you have the combo crafts to like flesh that out even more versus the big roster that I guess their move set in comparison to the smaller cast is more sporadic. Like some characters have a lot, some characters don't. So it's like, once again, it's a nitpick, you know. They're continuously making these next entries, and they got to move on to the next one. They can't sit here.
Yeah.
Well, they can if they wanted to, but like we know that they aren't. They've come out with Falcom has come out with a game every year since 1983, and the only year they missed was 2008. Do you know that? So it's like,
I did not know that. That was between Sky the Third and Zero, right? Between Sky
I said 1983, so this predates Trails overall.
No, I'm talking about in 2008. Like 2008 was between Sky the Third, and Zero, right? Because Zero came out 2010.
Yeah,
Sky the Third
you might be right. Yeah, and then I think 2009 was the year they released 3 games that year, which that's more than they usually released. You know, it's usually 1 a year, and then that year was like none, and then but this year is 3. So it's like, when you think about the fact that they have released a game every year for over 30 years at this point, it's like, okay, I guess I can understand why you won't put more into fleshing out specific characters, because we know your tradition is just keep it moving. But it's a critique nonetheless, you know. It makes me not want to use Estelle and Joshua. And it's like, Agate gets new shit, right? Agate gets Carnage Raid, which is a cool new cool new craft for him, right? That integrates both his integrates more of his berserk weapon into his moveset. The only thing he ever used his berserker weapon for was in his S craft. So I'm like, man, it's cool if he could actually use it for more things. I wish he could swap it out like Crow and Yuna in a gun type of thing, but didn't give that to him. But the fact that he got a cool craft that used it, I was like, cool. An old character getting something new. I wanted at least something like that for all of the old cast, at least one new thing, right? And Joshua and Estelle seem to be the only 2 that didn't get it. If you look at all of the rest of them, they got at least one thing that was like somewhat new or was brought back to it. Like for Lord, for example, we got Tiger Charge back. His first S-Craft from Trails from Zero. I was like, yes! That nostalgic feeling, and it's in a gameplay way, right? For Ellie's Divine Crusade, her second S-Craft in Azure, brought back as a regular craft. For, you know, you could find that for all of the characters except for Joshua and Estelle. I was like, these are the 2 OGs, man. You should have did more OGs for them. Where's Phoenix Wave, man? I want to use Phoenix Wave from Azure. That's my critique.
A lot of the returning girls, they increased their bust size.
Yeah, bacon titties, baby. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Something, I guess.
I guess that's something.
Carrying the plot.
Yeah, but you could say that. You could say that same critique for the original, the old Class 7. There was a few characters that got something new, but majority of them, their move set in comparison to what they had in Cold Steel 2, it's overall less, and it's like
I think Falcom that Emma is just as broken as she always has been.
Yeah, no, Emma is an example of a character that continuously got fleshed out. But there were certain characters. There was like your Cold Steel 2. When I had you at the end of Cold Steel 2, you're better than the version that you are now. And all I was asking was for at least one new thing that they unlocked in this specific game. If you look at all of the characters, the only characters that got new crafts was the sea route. The new
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's
the sea route, and you know the returning crafts in for the cross bell squad. But Rean didn't get any new crafts in this game. All of his crafts were stronger versions than what he already had before. Like Buddy got like 2 new versions of of his S craft, but no new S craft. But I mean,
but he got that nice new art, the Osborne art. Whenever he
Yo,
Whenever
yeah,
they
the key
enter
art, yeah, the
game.
cool. I do
Yeah,
like that
the
key art.
cool new
He's
key art.
like resembling Osborn, but
Yeah.
he
Before, but because I just saw what was written on. Before we have to wrap up. There is one burning question that
Yeah.
I really wanted to ask the three of you. Considering that this game's box art was for the Grandmaster as revealed at the end of Cold Steel 4.
Mhm.
Obviously, that brings a certain set of expectations.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about the involvement of that character within this game, and whether or not that character should have been the box art? What do you guys think?
Let Tarks go first since he's wrapping it up.
I can still stay till the end of this. Is fine. As box art, I think it looks great because I am
does look
so
great.
sick of character splash JRPG box art.
Right.
It's as plain as a sheet of paper at this point.
Yeah.
In terms of the story, and I think this is mainly just because it was like hyped up and talked about before I played the game. Everybody told me, "Oh, they reveal the Grandmaster in this game. They reveal the Grandma," and they showed a woman who is the Grandmaster, I guess. But like, what do we know about her?
Not a goddamn thing in comparison to the last time they showed her up to her bus into the end of Cold Steel 4, baby.
It made almost
in that
no
game, you got
difference.
titties, here's you got a face. Like literally, that cutscene was like.
I'm playing
similar.
I'm playing Nayuta right now, and I have to laugh because one of the characters in Nayuta, her design is so goddamn similar to what they.
Very similar.
It is very strikingly similar.
And I'm pretty darn confident they are not related. But like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like I'm seeing this. I've just seen the character already, but that's all I got. I only seen her. I know nothing else about the Grandmaster really. So I don't know. The carrot's still dangling in front of me. We haven't caught it yet.
Sure.
Yep. Even when it came to the McBurn stuff, like when McBurn left at the end of Cold Steel 4, and he's like, "Man, I got some things I need to do." I'm like, "Ooh, I'm about to see those things in Reverie." Nope.
When McBurn left and then came back, he's like, "Yeah, I know everything now," and he's like basically tells you, "Fuck all."
Yeah,
I loved that honestly because that
was awesome.
Like with that one character, it's like, you know what, his story doesn't involve me. This is fine. He's doing his thing. I'm actually, it's more interesting to me right now not to know. Grandmaster, I think just because it was hyped up, I wanted to learn something.
Learn more, at least.
I felt like I didn't learn much.
Yeah, it's like they use that scene to set up stuff that's going to happen in Califar, more so than anything to do with the Grandmaster.
The coolest part of that Grandmaster was the daydream that you get that has like the 3 threads that you choose becomes those threads that the Grandmaster's holding on the box cover, and I thought that was really neat. It's a fun way to bring it full circle, but otherwise,
Yeah, for me, it's I prefer the cover art, the reversible cover art, where it's like, it's a black background and it's split for the 3 main routes for the characters. It has Rean on the left, Lloyd on the right, and I think C in his mask in the middle. I think I might got that position mixed up, but I think that is a better representation of what you're doing for majority, if not all, of the game in comparison to the Grandmaster being the cover art. Even though it's good, like Tark said, the relevance that it has, I can see someone saying, "Man, why'd they put this on the cover art? This is false advertising," because it low-key was. What about you, Shadow?
So I actually had to look up the box art because I'm a digital person by nature.
I knew that was coming.
But yeah, it's like I feel the same way Tarks does. Like, okay, we see the Grandmaster, but we still don't know shit about her. So, is it really a big deal? Like, I think it was that much of a big deal, honestly.
You know which box art I'm talking about, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, I just posted it. I'm about to post it in the Discord. It's this one right here. This is the reversible cover art.
Oh, they should have used that. Fuck that.
Yeah, see, this is a far better representation of what you're going to be doing in the game in comparison to just a picture of the Grandmaster, which we see for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, yeah, I think this one does fall under the JRPG splash type of thing that Tarks was talking about, but that
Sort
doesn't
of.
change the fact that
The composition's quite a bit different, and I think it does reflect the actual gameplay, like how things are sectioned off. I will say,
Yeah.
like the Grandmaster cover is at least like, in a weird sort of artistic way, is at least kind of captivating. It's like alluring.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
very
You know,
very
it gives you
yeah.
questions that you want
It,
answers to, but
Right.
you
Yeah.
don't really get those answers.
yeah,
Right.
it has a lot of mystery
Great,
and
great point. Great
ethereal
way of putting it.
thematic to it. This one is like
Yeah.
this one's giving you a clear example of what you're going to be doing in the game. So both of them have different purposes, but at least this one you can't really have that heavy critique on it in regards to relevance to what you'll be playing.
Yeah.
It does,
I think
set up some
for me with the Grandmaster, it's like I said earlier, expectations of experiencing so many other stories of the same thing, just in other mediums. I've seen so many of individuals like that that have kept their appearances for so long, and they're slowly revealed throughout the course of the story. That for me, it was like another day at the office. I was I didn't I was like, another spooky line to take us into future events. I've seen this so many times, but it's always exciting. Ouroboros is such a massive part of why I really enjoy this story. So similar to the McBurn thing, both of those kept me equally captivated at the end of Cold Steel 4, like it did in Reverie. I couldn't wait to see more. And that was that in regards to the Grandmaster stuff, and also just really interesting conversation there in the Daydream as well. But other than that, good stuff.
Okay. We went on a little bit longer than I thought we would.
Oh yeah, you should have expected this, baby. Why do you think we were pushing it back so far? We got to do this, we got to do that. I think we all understood that, man. Once we get in there, man, it's we gonna dive deep into it.
So I will say, is there any other last things that we may want to talk about? 'Cause I'm sorry, people, if we don't get across to all your things, that themes and topics of the game that you want us to discuss. It's kind of a lot, so
Yeah.
apologies.
For Spoilercast, I don't think we spoiled all that much.
That is true. We nice out here in these streets. We really should have just went in on a whole bunch of things, but we actually, kind of held ourselves back a little bit. But overall, we really didn't spoil it too much.
Yeah, not too much. I think we definitely had a lot of good conversations in regards to the themes, the executions of what was going on here, and it's not like we didn't spoil certain things like Rufus being C or the android reveal. These are pretty big reveals that are in the game, but it's like it's bigger. There's a lot to talk about outside of just talking about things that are spoilers. This is a big game. This is a big game. There's a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
I think if I could just give one last thing, it's just a lot of credit for they took these two massive arcs, and even though Zero and Azure are two games, but these two big stories, and they somehow concluded both of them really well. And I have to commend them for that, because that's difficult to do with just one story. But they did it with three, and I think all three are satisfying in their own ways. All three stories that they told and all three routes were brilliant in different ways, but specifically the conclusions, I think were just really well executed. So I have to give Falcom a lot of credit for going back to a story in the Crossbell side that had been going on since Zero and concluding that very well here, putting a lot of prominence there. And obviously this being the end of Rean and the rest of Class 7's journey, I just think they did a great job of also concluding that. And it's crazy to me that they did that coming off of Cold Steel 4, which already felt like a grand conclusion. Then they come out with this, and it's like, man, now this feels like three grand conclusions. So I have to commend them for executing so many things as well as they did in this game, because they could have easily messed so many things up. And
it could have been a whole lot worse. Yeah.
They really did a great job.
It is quite incredible too that, like, even though you play three distinct storylines, the way they gradually marry together kind of blurs the lines between which which arc is whose anymore. Because I was thinking about this earlier when you guys were talking about, is C's arc the best one or whatever. And then I think back of like, okay, Rufus's end, like the big speech that Lloyd gives him. Do I consider that, like in my head, is that part of the C storyline or is that part of Lloyd's storyline? And at that point, like, everything has just already come together. So I think they took what's such a massive story. It required 3 separate POVs and married it together. I don't think I've seen it done that well in a video game, at least not in a very, very long time. So yeah, it's really commendable what they've done, bringing it all together.
Yeah, especially in the JRPG episodic subgenre that we have, because not a lot of franchises that you can even think of that have done it or have done it well. The only one I heard that has done it well before Trails apparently was Dot Hack. But outside of that, we're not even going to talk about the writing quality of Kingdom Hearts, right? Even though how much you like it, it's like critically, it's not even a part of the conversation, but it is a part of that subgenre.
I'm sure it's been floated past you before, and you might write it off because it's half visual novel. But the Udawari Ramono series is like right there.
Yeah. I haven't played it. I still need to play that. I heard that's a great one. I really want to play that.
It's got just as much reading.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that one as well. But another one that I can think of is Xenosaga, where it's like that wasn't that one supposed to be 5?
Yeah, Xenogears was supposed to be.
Both of them were supposed to be 5 at one point, but they didn't reach that.
I think Xenogears was supposed to be like 7. I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. Xenogears was supposed to be 7. We played part 5. Xenogears was part 5, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And Xenosaga was also supposed to be 5 episodes, but it didn't get that far. And now Xenoblade is like, oh yes, Xenoblade 1's like self-contained baby, and then Xenoblade 2 self-contained baby, and then you get to Xenoblade 3. Oh yeah, by the way, actually we're gonna rope all of this together. It's like, okay, you weren't planning this before, but you did a good job retconning some things and retroactively making it work, but there wasn't planned from the beginning.
There were things, at least in Xenoblade 1 and 2, that basically directly tied to Xenosaga.
Yeah. And Xenosaga was doing that for Xenogears as well, right?
It's something they just kind of wait until that last 45 minutes to pull out and spring on you.
Yeah. But my point is, like, the subgenre of episodic JRPGs,
yeah,
we don't get them that often.
Did anybody see that Weird Al biopic?
The what?
It's called Weird Al, the Al Yankovic story. It's a phony biopic, but it's fucking hilarious. But what you're saying reminds me something of that at one point. So there's like a child Weird Al who's yelling at his dad. He's like, I'm going to be the world's best accordion player. And then he storms off and he comes back and he's like, okay, not the best accordion player, but the best accordion player in a very niche subgenre of music.
What?
I feel like that's where we're at right now. Yeah, Trails into Reverie is the best episodic ongoing ARPG.
Okay. Sounds something WWE would say.
Hey, give your flowers where you can, because here's the thing. Here's the thing, right?
You're not wrong about it.
Final Fantasy VII Remake is also trying to do that episodic type of format, and we're starting to see the certain things that Trails has had to overcome and / or struggled with. People are complaining about that in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rebirth, and whatever the next one is going to be called, where they feel some of the side content feels like fluff or bloated, even though they're fleshing out the world because they have the ability to. And it's like with it being done to the most popular JRPG of all time, I wouldn't be surprised if other franchises try to do an episodic JRPG format because of what Final Fantasy VII is doing right now. Right?
Keep in mind, so Final Fantasy tried this twice before.
Yeah.
What, 10 and 10-2, or what?
Or 13 and 13-2 and 13-3.
Trash.
Correct. Yeah, 10 and 10-2 and 13-30. Yeah. So it's like, once again, it's like these executions. A lot of them is not even hit or miss. A lot of them are misses. So it's like, I'm gonna just give my flowers because Trails had a vision back in 2004 to do it, and they're doing a pretty good job here all the way in 2020, 2024. And I'm gonna give my flowers. You got to give them their flowers.
It's well deserved, honestly.
Yep.
Long form storytelling, baby.
Oh yeah, we love it. We love it here. We love long format storytelling.
Alrighty, I think that's a wrap. We are gonna head up out of here, people. If you enjoyed this spoiler cast, cause we can do another one for Daybreak.
Oh yeah.
Should we talk about like predictions for Daybreak? Oh no. We
I mean, here's the thing.
Recon's already played
one
it,
of
so
one of
never
us.
mind.
He's already played it.
Quiet.
You know,
I will stay quiet. I will
like
let
you
you
say.
sing. I promise.
Yeah, it's already
I won't
it's
say
already
anything.
big enough. I think a more interesting question, Shadow, is when do you want to do that Daybreak? Are we gonna drag our feet when it comes to getting to that one, or can we try and get that together a little bit quicker?
I'm gonna get that together a
never
lot quicker. I'm gonna get that game done within the year.
Yeah.
I mean, by all means, drag your feet. I have a baby now.
Yeah.
100-hour games are a little
Yeah,
bit harder.
we're not
Do that.
exactly. We're not entirely sure of Tarks' availability in the future. We definitely want him back. It's the same thing for you, Recon. I would love to have you back for future
Oh, dude, that'd be great.
spoiler cast.
Yeah.
I to the audience, I would like for us to come back here before 2025 to do a spoiler cast for Daybreak.
Dude, that
But
ain't
no,
looking good,
obviously
bud.
no promises. Obviously no promises.
We'll definitely be here before Daybreak too. We'll say
Oh
that.
yeah. Oh yeah. Right.
But technically, that should come out next year.
It should.
It should.
It
There
should.
should be no reason that doesn't come out next year. If it,
Yeah, especially if they're giving us Ease 10 at the end of this year. It's
Yeah.
like, okay. Yeah.
There's no reason. Okay, so yeah, we'll definitely be here before then, and we'll possibly best case scenario, we'll be there sometime this year. I don't know, because I plan to beat this game, within a
Daybreak?
month or two. Yeah, Daybreak after it releases. So we might be
Yeah.
here towards the end of the year, depending on everybody's availability and what everybody is. Well, if that's the case, then we're only just waiting for Tarks. So yeah, I'll take my time, Tarks, but yeah. All right, guys. You guys want to do some outros here? Riku, go ahead.
Riku's on one, the only one. Falcom's finest. I hope you
Falcom
guys
ass eater.
enjoyed Lord? Yeah, I've heard worse. Okay, some alliterations with Falcom and the other F word y'all are mean out there, bro. Y'all are
Oh
mean.
wow, that's wrong.
Yeah. Tarks is onto something. Y'all are getting pretty brutal out there. Like let's
Hey,
let's not.
my Reverie review isn't posted yet. I'm likely to edit that rant out. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
still
it's like,
coming.
yeah. Y'all can be a little brutal out there, okay? Let's just celebrate the fact that Falcom and Trails is still continuing and giving us quality. Can we all just get along, okay? Stop trying to do this whole, well, this arc is better. Stop, everyone. Let's just get along. We're happy. We're here. We're good. I hope no one in the comment section thought that a lot of the stuff that I went on rants about wasn't entertaining. If it was, I apologize. I am who I am. We talked about it before the show. It's still, I guess I still went off a little bit of the rails. I'm sorry, guys. But for the people that enjoyed it, you're welcome. For the people that didn't, I apologize. Okay? It is what it is.
It's okay, Riku.
I get it.
Is it though?
The way he said it, he said it as slow as
Yeah,
you
no.
would.
Oh
say
yeah,
it.
no, yeah. My
That-
brain's
that's
processing.
Jokes are always better when you get to explain them.
Oh yeah, right.
Tarks, go ahead.
Tarks Gauntlet. Hang on, check this out. Hang on. No, I don't have a burp. I'm sorry. Thanks for having me here. I tried so hard. My reviews for Reverie and Naruto will be coming out just ahead of Kuro, which should be when my channel begins operation again. So, if you never checked me out, it's Tarks Gauntlet or alternate channel, Tarks Inverted for the weird stuff.
All right, and King Recon.
Dude, thank y'all so much for having me, man. Like I said at the beginning, I was looking forward to a discussion. I almost never get to do this for Trails or anything of the sort, so it was a pleasure. Loved cooking with all three of y'all. It was really awesome. A lot of great discussion that was done here that I both enjoyed listening to and being a part of. So all love to you guys. Over on my channel, I don't do much video game stuff outside of Trails and Final Fantasy, but if you guys are into One Piece especially, that's my main thing. A long series just like Trails, so if you have time for Trails, definitely have time for One Piece. For all of y'all out there who are looking into anything like that, that's what we do over on my channel, but definitely looking forward to the English release of Kuro no Kiseki, Trails Through Daybreak. Definitely going to be looking for first-time viewers, first-time players for those games. So excited to see how everybody feels about that when it releases. So I'm looking forward to the next time we're all able to get together. But all love to you guys. It was a great time.
All right. And this is Mr. JRPG Shadow. We appreciate you guys staying for this long and being here for us to discuss this game. This since King Recon didn't say it, raw peak fiction game here. Yeah, that's it for now, and we'll catch you guys on the next spoiler cast. Deuces.
Peace out, people.
There it is.
Full circle.
Please tell me I got it in before you stop.